Hello guys, welcome to Potter Paradox. So in this video, we will see what if Harry let Draco Malfoy die in the Room of Requirement. If you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to show us some love by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support means the world to us. Now, let's start the story. Chapter 1, The Unforgivable Decision. Harry's lungs burned as he sprinted through the 7th floor corridor, Ron and Hermione's footsteps pounding behind him. The castle shook with distant explosions, the Battle of Hogwarts raging in full force below them. This way! Harry shouted, skidding around a corner toward the familiar blank wall. We need the Room of Hidden Things. His mind raced as he paced 3 times in front of the wall. We need to find the diadem. We need to find the diadem. We need to find the place where everything is hidden. The ornate door materialized, and Harry yanked it open, plunging inside with Ron and Hermione on his heels. The door slammed shut behind them, briefly muffling the sounds of battle. Bloody hell, Ron whispered. The Room of Requirement stretched before them, a cathedral-sized space crammed with thousands of objects. Towers of broken furniture, banned books, confiscated weapons, and generations of hidden contraband created a labyrinth of narrow aisles. Split up. Ron suggested. No. Harry shook his head. Last time we did that, we found nothing. I know roughly where it is, by that old vanishing cabinet and the bust with the wig. Hermione drew her wand. Lead the way, then. We need to hurry. They moved through the stacks, Harry's eyes scanning every shelf, every pile. The diadem was here, he'd seen it before. He just needed to. Someone's coming, Hermione hissed suddenly, grabbing Harry's arm. Voices echoed through the towering piles of junk, familiar voices. Harry pulled his friends behind a mountain of broken desks just as footsteps rounded the corner. Find Potter, came Draco Malfoy's drawling voice. The Dark Lord wants him alive. What if we just finish him? That was Crabbe, or maybe Goyle. Harry couldn't tell their voices apart. Idiot, Draco snapped. The Dark Lord's orders were clear. Potter is his. Harry caught Ron's eye, seeing his own tension mirrored there. They were trapped. If they moved toward the exit, Malfoy would spot them. If they stayed, they'd waste precious time. Harry pointed to himself, then to the left. Ron and Hermione nodded, they'd create a distraction while Harry continued searching. Harry crept away while Ron whispered to Hermione. Moments later, a loud crash echoed through the room as Ron magically toppled a pile of chairs 50 feet in the opposite direction. There, shouted Crabbe. It's them. Footsteps thundered away from Harry. He seized his chance, darting forward through the towering aisles. Where was that cabinet? Where was the bust? His eyes frantically scanned the cluttered shelves. Then he saw it, the stone bust wearing a discolored wig. And perched on top, glinting dully in the dim light, Ravenclaw's diadem. Harry lunged for it just as spellfire erupted behind him. The voices of his friends and the Slytherins echoed through the cavernous room. Stupefy! Hermione shouted. Crucio! Crabbe bellowed back. Hermione! Ron's panicked voice rang out. Harry grabbed the diadem, stuffing it into his pocket as he sprinted back toward the sounds of battle. He rounded a corner to find Ron and Hermione trading curses with Malfoy, Crabbe, and Goyle. Multicolored jets of light ricocheted off piles of forbidden items. Harry, run! Hermione shouted when she spotted him. We've got what we need. You're not going anywhere, Potter. Crabbe snarled, his wand slashing through the air. Avada Kedavra. Harry dove behind a mountain of broken chairs as the killing curse blasted a hole in the wall behind him. Don't kill him, you idiot! Malfoy shouted, grabbing Crabbe's arm. The Dark Lord wants him alive. Crabbe shook him off. I don't take orders from you anymore, Malfoy. Your family's finished. Harry scrambled to his feet. Ron! Hermione. Head for the door. They backed away, firing shield charms and stunners as they retreated. Harry flanked right, hoping to rejoin them near the exit. The three Slytherins advanced, Crabbe's face twisted with malice. Descendo! Hermione cried, causing a tower of objects to collapse between them and their pursuers. The brief respite gave Harry enough time to reach his friends. They turned to run for the exit when Crabbe's voice roared behind them, "Fiendfire!" Harry looked back in horror as a massive serpent of flame erupted from Crabbe's wand, instantly devouring everything in its path. The fire twisted unnaturally, taking the shape of chimeras, dragons, and other monstrous creatures. "Run!" Harry bellowed. They sprinted for the door, but the cursed fire moved faster than they could, cutting off their path. The temperature in the room skyrocketed as the flames consumed centuries of hidden treasures. "We're trapped!" Hermione screamed over the roar of the inferno. Behind them, panicked shouts erupted from the Slytherins. The fire had turned back on its caster. Harry could hear Malfoy shouting Crabbe's name, their footsteps scrambling in the opposite direction. "This way!" Harry pointed toward a teetering stack of desks that the fire hadn't yet reached. They clambered up, trying to escape the rapidly advancing flames. "We're going to die in here," Ron gasped, his face slick with sweat. Harry frantically scanned their surroundings, desperation mounting, then he spotted them. Brooms. 3 ancient broomsticks leaned against a nearby wardrobe. Harry pointed his wand. Accio brooms. The brooms zoomed toward them. Harry grabbed one, tossing the others to Ron and Hermione. "Get to the door," he shouted, kicking off from the stack of furniture. They soared above the inferno, the heat so intense Harry felt his skin blistering. Below them, the room of requirement had become a sea of cursed fire, consuming everything in its path. A scream cut through the roar of flames. Harry spotted them, Malfoy and Goyle clinging to a fragile tower of charred desks, Crabbe nowhere to be seen. The fire rose around them like hungry predators, closing in for the kill. "Help!" Malfoy screamed, his pale face streaked with soot and terror. His eyes locked with Harry's, pleading. For a single, suspended moment, time seemed to stop. Harry hovered above the inferno, staring down at the boy who'd made his life hell for 7 years. The boy who'd taken the dark mark. The boy who'd let Death Eaters into Hogwarts, who tried to deliver Harry to Voldemort just minutes ago. "Harry!" Hermione shouted from near the door. "We have to help them." Harry's grip tightened on his broom. He thought of Dumbledore falling from the astronomy tower. Of Dobby dying on the beach. Of Fred, of Remus, of Tonks, all the people who died because of Voldemort and those who served him. "Harry!" Hermione called again, more desperate. A terrible clarity washed over Harry. This was war. They didn't have time. The Horcrux was in his pocket. Every second they stayed risked their lives, risked the mission. "We need to go." Harry shouted back, turning his broom toward the exit. "Now." "But," Ron began, looking back at the stranded Slytherins. "Now." Harry roared, the fire's heat scorching his back as he sped toward the door. Behind them, Malfoy's screams grew more frantic. "Potter! Don't leave us!" Harry didn't look back. He shot through the door, Ron and Hermione following seconds later. They crashed into the corridor wall and tumbled to the floor as the door to the room of requirement slammed shut behind them. For several moments, they lay gasping on the stone floor, clothes smoking, lungs heaving. The sounds of distant battle echoed up from the floors below, but here, the corridor was eerily quiet. Then the screaming stopped. The sudden silence hit Harry like a physical blow. The absence of Malfoy's terrified voice meant only one thing. "Harry." Hermione's voice cracked. We had no choice," Harry said flatly, his voice strange to his own ears. "We couldn't risk it. The diadem was more important." Ron stared at the closed door, his face ashen. Bloody hell, mate. Malfoy's really dead. Harry finished, the word hanging in the air between them. Yeah. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the diadem. The metal was hot to the touch, almost burning his fingers. We need to destroy this, he said, his voice mechanical. Then we find the snake. Hermione's eyes were wide with shock. Harry, Malfoy and the others, they tried to kill us, Harry cut her off. They were Death Eaters. This is war, Hermione. But we could have, no. Harry stood up, his legs shaking slightly. We couldn't risk it. We've got a job to do. Ron looked between them, conflict clear on his face. He's right, Hermione. They chose their side. And Crabbe's the one who cast that bloody fire spell in the first place. Hermione pressed her lips together, tears welling in her eyes. After a moment, she nodded stiffly. The basilisk fangs, she said quietly. We still have them. Harry helped her up, and the three of them stood facing the closed door of the room of requirement. No sounds came from within. No screams. No roaring flames. Just silence. Let's go, Harry said, pocketing the diadem. We're running out of time. They moved down the corridor, away from the room where Draco Malfoy had died. Harry felt something hard and cold forming in his chest, a calcified resolve. This was what war demanded. Choices. Sacrifices. There would be time for guilt later, if they survived. Right now, Voldemort was waiting. The battle raged through the hallways of Hogwarts. Jets of light streaked through the air as Death Eaters clashed with students, teachers, and Order members. Harry, Ron, and Hermione raced down the grand staircase, dodging curses and jumping over rubble. The Chamber of Secrets, Hermione panted as they took cover behind a fallen statue. We can destroy the diadem there. A blast rocked the floor beneath them, sending chunks of stone flying. Harry peered around the statue to see Ginny dueling alongside Neville against a masked Death Eater. This way, Ron urged, pointing toward a less crowded corridor. They sprinted across the entrance hall, narrowly avoiding a shower of deadly spells. As they rounded the corner toward Myrtle's bathroom, Harry caught sight of a familiar platinum blonde head across the hall. Narcissa Malfoy stood beside her husband, both firing curses at Professor Flitwick. They didn't know yet. They didn't know their son was dead, that Harry had left him to burn. Something twisted in Harry's stomach, but he pushed the feeling down. Later. He'd deal with it later. They reached the girls' bathroom to find it miraculously untouched by the battle. The sink stood in their familiar circle, hiding the entrance to the chamber. Do it, Harry, Hermione urged. Harry focused on the small snake etched on the tap. Open, he hissed in Parseltongue. The sinks groaned and shifted, revealing the dark pipe leading down to the chamber. One by one, they slid down into the damp darkness below. The chamber was exactly as Harry remembered it, cavernous, eerily lit, and lined with serpentine statues. The basilisk skeleton still lay where it had fallen 5 years ago, its massive fangs intact. Ron stepped forward, wrenching a fong from the skull. Should I do it this time? Harry placed the diadem on the wet stone floor. Go ahead. Ron knelt beside the tiara, fong poised above it. For Fred, he whispered, then plunged the fong into the ancient artifact. The diadem screamed, black smoke pouring from it as cracks spread across its surface. A ghostly face formed in the smoke, twisted, inhuman, before dissipating into nothing. That's it, Hermione said quietly. Just the snake now. And then. She didn't finish. She didn't need to. They all knew what came next. Harry helped Ron to his feet, and they gathered a few more basilisk fangs. As they climbed back up to the bathroom, the castle shook with another explosion. The battle was intensifying. Listen, Harry said as they emerged into the bathroom. "I need to find Voldemort. The snake will be with him." "We're coming with you," Ron said immediately. Harry shook his head. "I need you both to destroy the snake if I can't. Split up, cover more ground." "Harry," Hermione began. "Please." Harry's voice was firm. "This is how it has to be." After a moment, they nodded reluctantly. Before they could leave the bathroom, however, the cold, high voice of Voldemort echoed throughout the castle, magically amplified to reach every corner. "You have fought valiantly, but in vain." Harry froze, listening as Voldemort called for a temporary ceasefire, demanding that Harry Potter surrender himself within the hour. "Deliver me Harry Potter, and none shall be harmed." The voice faded, leaving a ringing silence. "You're not going," Ron said fiercely. "Don't even think about it." Harry stared at his friends, his mind racing. "I need to see what's happening. We need to find the snake." They hurried back to the Great Hall, where the defenders of Hogwarts had gathered during the ceasefire. The wounded lay on makeshift beds, while others moved among them, offering what help they could. And then Harry saw them, the dead. Laid in a row in the center of the hall. Fred's body, surrounded by the Weasleys. Remus and Tonks, lying side by side, hands almost touching. "Oh God," Hermione whispered, her hand flying to her mouth. Ron stumbled forward toward his family, grief etched into every line of his face. Harry stood frozen, the weight of each death settling on his shoulders like stones. This was what they were fighting for. This was why he couldn't save Malfoy. Every second counted. Every decision mattered. A commotion near the entrance hall caught Harry's attention. Lucius and Narcissa Malfoy were pushing through the crowd, their faces frantic. "Where is he?" Narcissa demanded of McGonagall. "Where is Draco?" The professor's stern face softened slightly. "I haven't seen him, Mrs. Malfoy. Perhaps he's with the other Slytherin students who evacuated." "He wouldn't leave," Lucius insisted, his usual composure cracking. "He was instructed to find Potter." Harry felt the blood drain from his face. Beside him, Hermione stiffened. "Harry," she whispered. "They don't know." "And they can't know," Harry muttered back. "Not now. It would only cause chaos." But even as he said it, Narcissa's wild eyes found him across the hall. She strode toward him, Lucius close behind. "Potter," she hissed, grabbing his arm. "Where is my son? Have you seen him?" Harry looked into her desperate face and felt his mouth go dry. The truth hovered on his tongue, that her son was dead, that Harry had left him to die, but he swallowed it down. "I haven't seen him," he lied, voice steady despite the hammering of his heart. Narcissa searched his face, her grip tightening on his arm. "You're lying." "I'm not," Harry insisted, meeting her gaze. "Last I saw, he was in the castle, but that was hours ago." She held his stare for a long moment before Lucius pulled her away. "We'll find him, Narcissa," Lucius said, his voice uncharacteristically gentle. "Come, we'll search the castle while we can." As they hurried away, Harry felt Hermione's accusing gaze. "You should have told them," she whispered. "And what good would that do?" Harry shot back. "We're in the middle of a battle. Their son made his choice when he took the dark mark." The harshness of his own words surprised him. Was this who he was becoming? Someone who could lie to a mother's face about her dead son. Someone who could leave a classmate to burn alive. Before he could dwell on it, Neville approached them, his face grim with determination. "Harry, I've been thinking, if you're going after you-know-who, the snake might be with him, right? That big one?" Harry nodded cautiously. "Nagini. Why?" "Just, if Ron and Hermione are busy, and you can't get to it." Neville straightened his shoulders. "I'll kill the snake." Harry looked at his friend, battered, bloodied, but standing tall, and felt a surge of fierce pride. Thanks, Neville. That means a lot. As Neville moved away to help with the wounded, Harry turned back to Ron and Hermione. I need to check something, he said. I'll be right back. Before they could question him, Harry slipped away from the Great Hall. He needed a moment alone, needed to process what he'd done, what he still had to do. He found a quiet alcove and pulled out the Marauder's map, scanning it desperately for any sign of Draco Malfoy. Nothing. The name was gone. It was real, then. Malfoy was really dead. By the cursed fire, or by Harry's choice, did it matter which? Harry closed his eyes, the weight of the decision pressing down on him. He thought of Malfoy's terrified face as the flames closed in. Of the screams that still echoed in his head. I had no choice, he whispered to the empty corridor. We're at war. The justification rang hollow, even to his own ears. A silvery glow caught his attention, a Patronus, taking the form of a doe. Snape's Patronus. It moved down the corridor, clearly intending for Harry to follow. Harry hesitated only a moment before trailing after the ghostly creature. It led him to the headmaster's office, where the gargoyle stood askew, allowing passage without a password. The office was empty when Harry entered. The portraits of former headmasters watched him silently, including Dumbledore's, which appeared to be sleeping. On the desk sat a small stone basin, the pensieve, with a crystal vial beside it. A memory, left for Harry to find. With trembling fingers, Harry uncorked the vial and poured its contents into the basin. The silvery substance swirled invitingly. Taking a deep breath, Harry plunged his face into the memory. What followed shattered everything Harry thought he knew. Snape's memories unfolded before him, his friendship with Harry's mother, his love for her, his promise to protect her son. And most devastatingly, the truth about Harry himself. A part of Voldemort lives inside him. Dumbledore's voice echoed as Harry watched the conversation between the former headmaster and Snape. The boy must die, and Voldemort himself must do it. Harry stumbled back from the pensieve, gasping as if he'd been underwater. His mind reeled with the revelation. He was a Horcrux. He had to die. Strangely, the horror of this knowledge didn't crush him as it should have. Instead, it settled beside the cold, hard knot that had formed when he'd left Malfoy to die. Another terrible truth in a day full of them. Harry left the headmaster's office in a daze, his feet carrying him down the spiral staircase and through the battle-scarred corridors. The hour Voldemort had given them was nearly up. As he passed a shattered window, Harry caught sight of movement in the courtyard below. The Malfoys, still searching desperately for their son. Narcissa's face was tear-streaked as she called Draco's name, her voice growing more frantic with each unanswered cry. Harry turned away, unable to watch. He'd made his choice in the room of requirement. Now, he had to make another. He found Ron and Hermione near the entrance to the Great Hall. "Where've you been?" Ron demanded. "We thought, I need to go into the forest," Harry interrupted. "Voldemort has the Elder Wand. Snape is dead." "What?" Hermione gasped. "Harry, what happened?" Harry shook his head. "There's no time. Listen, the snake is the last Horcrux. Kill it, and then it's just him." Understanding dawned in Hermione's eyes, followed swiftly by horror. "Harry, no," she whispered. "You can't be thinking of giving yourself up." "It's the only way," Harry said simply. Ron grabbed his shoulders. "Have you lost your mind? After everything, after Malfoy, you're just going to walk to your death." At the mention of Malfoy, Harry flinched. "This is different." "How?" Ron demanded. "How is sacrificing yourself any different from, because it's my choice?" Harry shouted. The words echoed in the empty corridor. More quietly, he added, "Malfoy didn't get a choice. I'm choosing this." Tears streamed down Hermione's face. "There has to be another way." "There isn't." Harry's voice was gentle now. You know there isn't. Before they could stop him, Harry pulled them both into a fierce hug. Kill the snake, he whispered. Then finish him. Harry slipped the invisibility cloak over himself and walked away, ignoring their desperate calls. The decision had been made. Just like in the room of requirement, there was no going back. As he crossed the devastated grounds toward the forbidden forest, Harry felt oddly calm. The sounds of battle had faded, replaced by an eerie silence. The ceasefire still held, for now. Near the edge of the forest, Harry paused. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the snitch Dumbledore had left him. I am about to die, he whispered to it. The golden shell split open, revealing the resurrection stone nestled inside. Harry turned it 3 times in his hand. They appeared around him, ghostly figures with kind, sad smiles. His parents, Sirius, Remus. The family he'd lost. You've been so brave, his mother said, her voice like a half-forgotten dream. We're proud of you, his father added. Harry looked at them hungrily, memorizing their faces. Does it hurt? Dying? Sirius shook his head. Quicker than falling asleep. Will you stay with me? Harry asked. Until the end, Remus promised. Harry nodded, then paused, a thought occurring to him. Is Malfoy there? Where you are? The spirits exchanged glances. Death comes for everyone eventually, his mother said softly. Some sooner than others. But what matters is how you live, Harry. The choices you make. Harry swallowed hard. I left him to die. You were at war, Sirius said. War forces impossible choices. But can you forgive yourself? Remus asked gently. Harry didn't answer. He couldn't. Instead, he took a deep breath and stepped forward, his ghostly guardians walking beside him. The forest enveloped him in darkness as he moved toward his own death, the weight of all his choices, Malfoy, the Horcruxes, this final sacrifice, carried with each step. Ahead, flickering between the trees, Harry could see the light of Voldemort's camp. The end of his journey. The beginning of whatever came next. Harry Potter walked on, ready to die. The clearing was filled with Death Eaters when Harry arrived. Voldemort stood in the center, the Elder Wand held loosely in his skeletal fingers, Nagini floating beside him in her magical protective bubble. Harry let the resurrection stone fall from his fingers. The spirits of his loved ones vanished. He pulled off the invisibility cloak and stepped into the clearing. Harry Potter, Voldemort's cold voice caressed the name like a lover. The boy who lived, come to die. The Death Eaters shifted, murmuring excitedly. Among them, Harry spotted the Malfoys. Narcissa's face was tear-streaked, her eyes red-rimmed. Lucius looked broken, a shadow of his former imperious self. They still didn't know. Or maybe they did, and couldn't accept it. Either way, Harry would be beyond their vengeance soon enough. I'm here, Harry said simply, his wand hanging uselessly at his side. He would not defend himself. This was how it had to be. Voldemort tilted his head, studying Harry with those terrible red eyes. No clever words. No defiance. How disappointing. The Dark Lord raised the Elder Wand. I expected more from you, Harry Potter. Harry stared back, unblinking. Just get on with it. A flash of anger crossed Voldemort's serpentine features. He wanted fear. He wanted begging. Harry would give him neither. Avada Kedavra. The jet of green light streaked toward Harry's chest. He didn't flinch. Didn't close his eyes. His last thought was of those he was leaving behind, Ron, Hermione, Ginny. And strangely, of Draco Malfoy, whose face would follow Harry into whatever came next. The killing curse struck. Harry fell. And then, whiteness. Harry blinked, finding himself in a bright, clean space that resembled King's Cross Station, but drained of all color and noise. He was naked, but as he thought about clothes, robes appeared nearby. After dressing, Harry noticed he wasn't alone. A small, misshapen creature lay whimpering under a bench, a grotesque, flayed-looking thing. You cannot help it. Harry turned to find Albus Dumbledore walking toward him, beaming. Harry, you wonderful boy. You brave, brave man. Professor. Harry stared in disbelief. Are you real? Or is this all in my head? Dumbledore's eyes twinkled. Of course it's in your head, Harry. But why should that mean it isn't real? They sat together on a bench, and Dumbledore explained everything, how Voldemort had taken Harry's blood, tethering Harry to life while Voldemort lived. How the killing curse had destroyed the Horcrux within Harry instead of Harry himself. So I can go back? Harry asked. If you choose to. Harry nodded, then hesitated. Professor, in the room of requirement. Malfoy. I left him to die, Dumbledore finished gently. Yes, I know. I had to, Harry said, the words sounding hollow even to himself. For the greater good. Dumbledore winced at the phrase. The greater good has justified many terrible acts, Harry. I, of all people, should know that. Then what should I have done? Harry demanded. Risked everything to save someone who was trying to capture me for Voldemort. I cannot tell you what you should have done, Dumbledore said softly. Only you can decide if your choice was right. Harry looked away, his throat tight. If I go back, his parents will want revenge. They'll blame me. Yes, they will. And they'd be right to. Dumbledore sighed. Perhaps. War makes monsters of us all, in different ways. He placed a hand on Harry's shoulder. The question is, what will you do with the life you've been given? Will you let this choice define you? Or will you find a way forward? Harry stared at the pathetic creature under the bench, Voldemort's soul fragment, damaged beyond repair. Would the guilt of Malfoy's death fester inside him like that? Would it twist him, change him? I want to go back, Harry said finally. I need to finish this. Dumbledore smiled sadly. Then go. But remember, Harry, our choices make us who we are. Far more than our abilities. The white station began to fade. Dumbledore's figure grew transparent. One last thing, Harry, the old wizard called as he disappeared. Draco Malfoy's death was not in vain. His wand's allegiance passed to you when you chose not to save him. The Elder Wand will not work against its true master. Before Harry could ask what this meant, the whiteness consumed everything, and he was falling back to life. Harry lay still on the forest floor, heart beating, eyes closed. He could feel the cool earth beneath him, hear the anxious murmurs of the Death Eaters. My lord. Bellatrix's voice, concerned. My lord, are you hurt? I don't need your help, Voldemort's cold voice snapped. Then, someone check the boy. Make sure he's dead. Soft footsteps approached. Harry felt someone kneel beside him, long hair brushing his face. A hand, trembling slightly, pressed against his chest, feeling the telltale beat of his heart. It was Narcissa Malfoy. Harry barely dared to breathe as her face came close to his. Her voice was barely a whisper, meant for his ears alone. Draco? Is he alive? Is my son in the castle? Harry's stomach clenched. She still didn't know. Still hoped. For a fleeting moment, Harry considered lying. Giving her hope to secure his own safety. But something stopped him, perhaps the last shred of the person he'd been before the war, before the room of requirement. No, he breathed, the word nearly inaudible. I'm sorry. Narcissa's hand convulsed against his chest. A small, broken sound escaped her, quickly stifled. For a long moment, she remained frozen. Then she stood. Dead, she called to Voldemort, her voice remarkably steady. Harry lay still, waiting for her to reveal his lie. To tell Voldemort he lived. To take her revenge. She did not. Are you certain? Voldemort demanded. Yes, my lord. Harry heard Voldemort's footsteps approach. Felt something prod his side, a foot, rolling him over. Harry let his head loll lifelessly. See? Voldemort crowed to his followers. Harry Potter is dead by my hand. Cheers erupted from the Death Eaters. Victorious cries and laughter. Hagrid's sobs cut through the celebration, the half-giant having been forced to watch Harry's apparent death. You, Voldemort commanded. Carry the body to the castle. Let them see their hero, defeated. Harry felt Hagrid's massive hands lift him, cradling him like a child. The procession began moving toward Hogwarts, Voldemort leading the way in triumph. As they marched, Harry cracked his eyes open just enough to see Narcissa walking beside her husband. Her face was a mask of cold fury, her grief channeled into something harder, more dangerous. Her eyes never left Harry's limp form. She knew the truth now, about her son, about Harry. And she had chosen to let Harry live, not out of mercy, but for something else. Something Harry couldn't yet comprehend. The forest thinned. They approached the castle. Harry could hear Voldemort magically amplifying his voice, announcing Harry's death to the defenders of Hogwarts. Heard the cries of denial, of grief. Through slitted eyes, Harry saw his friends emerge from the castle. Ron holding Hermione back as she screamed his name. Ginny's face contorted in anguish. McGonagall's hand pressed to her mouth in shock. Harry Potter is dead. Voldemort proclaimed. The war is over. Surrender now, and you will be spared. Neville stepped forward, limping but defiant. Harry watched through barely open eyes as Voldemort tried to recruit him, as Neville refused. And then, chaos erupted. Neville pulled the sword of Gryffindor from the sorting hat and slashed through Nagini's protective bubble. The sword cleaved the snake's head from its body in one clean stroke. The final Horcrux destroyed. Harry seized his moment. He rolled from Hagrid's arms and sprinted toward the castle, pulling his invisibility cloak from beneath his robes as curses flew past him. He's alive, someone shouted. The battlefield erupted into renewed fighting. Harry ducked behind a pillar, heart pounding. Across the courtyard, Voldemort's face contorted with rage. The Dark Lord began firing killing curses indiscriminately, cutting down friend and foe alike in his fury. It was time to end this. Harry stepped into the open, cloak discarded. Tom Riddle, he shouted. The battlefield stilled. All eyes turned to Harry and Voldemort. You were right, Tom, Harry called, circling slowly. Draco Malfoy is dead. I let him die in the room of requirement. Gasps echoed across the courtyard. Near the castle steps, Harry caught sight of Narcissa, her wand pointed at him, her face a mask of cold rage. But his death served a purpose, Harry continued, eyes locked on Voldemort. His wand's allegiance passed to me. And since you took the Elder Wand from Snape, who never truly mastered it. Understanding dawned in Voldemort's serpentine face. Lies, he hissed. The wand knows its true master, Harry said. It won't kill me. Avada Kedavra. Voldemort screamed, just as Harry shouted, Expelliarmus. The spells collided in midair. The Elder Wand flew from Voldemort's hand, spinning through the air as Harry's disarming charm struck true. At the same moment, Voldemort's killing curse rebounded, striking its caster squarely in the chest. Voldemort fell backward, arms splayed, the inhuman eyes rolling upward. The Dark Lord was dead, killed by his own rebounded curse. For a moment, absolute silence blanketed the courtyard. Then cheers erupted, defenders rushing forward to embrace Harry, to touch the boy who lived, twice now. Harry barely registered their celebrations. His eyes found Narcissa Malfoy across the battlefield. She stared at him, her wand still raised, grief and hatred etched into every line of her face. She could have killed him then. Could have cast a curse while everyone was distracted by victory. Harry wouldn't have blamed her. Instead, she slowly lowered her wand. Her eyes never left Harry's as she spoke a single word, not a spell, but a promise, after. Then she turned away, her arm around her shell-shocked husband, and walked from the battlefield. Harry watched them go, the cold knot in his chest tightening. The war was over. Voldemort was defeated. But some battles, he knew, were just beginning. Chapter 2, Ashes and Fire. The great hall buzzed with a chaotic blend of triumph and grief. Bodies of the fallen lay in rows along one wall, while the wounded occupied makeshift cots scattered throughout the space. Survivors hugged, cried, and whispered in disbelieving tones about Voldemort's death. Harry stood in the doorway, invisible beneath his cloak, watching. He should have felt something. Relief. Joy. Anything. But the emotions wouldn't come. Just a hollow emptiness where celebration should be, and the persistent image of Malfoy's terrified face as the fiend fire closed in. Harry. Hermione's voice came from behind him. I know you're there. He pulled off the cloak, offering a weak smile. Hey. She didn't smile back. Ron's with his family. Fred, you know. Yeah. Neither spoke for a moment. The weight of all they'd lost hung between them. The Malfoys are gone, Hermione finally said. They left right after you killed him. Harry nodded. I saw. They know, don't they? About Draco? Yeah. I told Narcissa in the forest. Harry ran a hand through his filthy hair. She could have told Voldemort I was alive. But she didn't. Hermione frowned. Why wouldn't she? After what happened to her son? I don't know. Harry glanced around at the celebrating crowd. But I don't think they're done with me. What will you do? Harry shrugged. Right now. I just need sleep. And a shower. Hermione stepped closer, lowering her voice. Harry, people are already talking. About what you said during the duel. About letting Malfoy die. Let them talk, Harry said flatly. It's the truth. But, no buts, Hermione. I made a choice. I'm not going to lie about it. Her eyes searched his. You don't sound like yourself. Maybe I'm not anymore. Before she could respond, McGonagall approached, her face lined with exhaustion but her eyes bright. Potter. She placed a hand on his shoulder. Words cannot express our gratitude. You should get some rest. The Gryffindor dormitories are relatively intact. Harry nodded, grateful for the escape. Thanks, Professor. And Potter? Her voice softened. What happened in the room of requirement? We'll need to discuss it, eventually. But not today. Harry stared at her, momentarily caught off guard. Even McGonagall was judging his choice. Nothing to discuss, he said stiffly. I did what I had to do. McGonagall's lips thinned, but she merely nodded. Get some rest. Harry turned away, threading through the crowd toward the exit. People reached for him as he passed, hands patting his back, voices calling his name. He acknowledged them with nods but kept moving. Outside the great hall, the castle was eerily quiet. Scorch marks blackened the walls. Rubble crunched beneath Harry's feet. Hogwarts, his first real home, lay broken around him. He made it halfway up the main staircase before his legs gave out. He sat heavily, pressing his palms against his eyes until starbursts appeared. Harry Potter. He looked up to find nearly headless Nick floating before him, the ghost's expression unusually solemn. Sir Nicholas, Harry acknowledged wearily. The ghosts have been discussing what happened, Nick said, his transparent form wavering slightly. With young Malfoy. Harry's jaw tightened. Of course they have. He's not among us, Nick continued. Sometimes, when a death is particularly violent or unexpected, the spirit lingers. But Draco moved on. Something about this statement made Harry's chest constrict. Is that supposed to make me feel better? No, Nick said simply. Just thought you should know. The ghost drifted away, leaving Harry alone with his thoughts. He forced himself to his feet and continued climbing toward Gryffindor Tower. The fat lady's portrait hung askew but intact. She swung open without a password when she saw him. My brave boy, she whispered as he climbed through. The common room was empty, the fire long dead. Harry trudged up to his old dormitory, finding it untouched by the battle. His four-poster bed waited, red curtains dusty but welcoming. He collapsed onto it, not bothering to remove his filthy clothes or glasses. Sleep claimed him instantly, dragging him down into darkness. Harry jolted awake, heart hammering. Flames danced behind his eyelids. Screams echoed in his ears. It took him a moment to realize where he was, Gryffindor Tower, morning sunlight streaming through the windows. The battle was over. Voldemort was dead. And so was Malfoy. Harry sat up, rubbing his face. His muscles ached, his body a catalogue of bruises and cuts. He needed a shower desperately. He stumbled to the bathroom, stripping off his filthy clothes. Under the hot water, he watched as dirt, blood, and soot swirled down the drain. Some of it might have been Malfoy's ashes, for all he knew. The thought made his stomach lurch. He shut off the water, suddenly unable to bear it. Clean clothes had appeared on a nearby bench, jeans and a simple t-shirt, clearly left by someone while he slept. Harry dressed quickly and headed downstairs. The Great Hall had transformed overnight. The bodies were gone, the wounded moved elsewhere. House tables had returned, though people sat randomly, house divisions temporarily forgotten. Sunlight streamed through the enchanted ceiling, oddly cheerful against the somber mood below. Harry hesitated in the doorway, suddenly reluctant to face everyone. Before he could retreat, Ron spotted him and waved. There you are, mate. Ron's eyes were red-rimmed, his voice hoarse. Thought you might sleep straight through to tomorrow. Harry slid onto the bench next to him. How are you? How's your family? Ron's face darkened. Managing. Mum's a wreck. George hasn't spoken since. He trailed off, then shook himself. But we'll be okay. Eventually. Hermione sat across from them, picking at a piece of toast. The ministry's already sent representatives. Kingsley's acting as temporary minister. Good, Harry said automatically, reaching for a cup of coffee. He's the right choice. An awkward silence fell. Harry could feel them watching him, waiting for something. Some sign that he was still the Harry they knew. Just say it, he sighed, setting down his cup. Whatever you're thinking. Ron and Hermione exchanged glances. We're worried about you, Hermione finally said. After everything that happened. I'm fine. You're not, Ron countered. And that's okay. None of us are fine. Harry stared into his coffee. What do you want me to say? That I regret it? That I wish I'd saved Malfoy? Do you? Hermione asked quietly. The question hung between them. Harry thought of Malfoy's screams, of the Malfoy's grief, of Narcissa's cold promise, after. I don't know, he admitted. It was war. We needed the Horcrux. He was trying to capture us for Voldemort. He paused. But yeah, sometimes I hear him screaming. Ron placed a hand on Harry's shoulder. You did what you thought was right, mate. That's all any of us can do. But was it right? Harry looked between them. Everyone keeps talking around it, like I'm going to break if they ask directly. So I'm asking you both, was I right to let him die? Hermione bit her lip. I don't think there's a simple answer to that, Harry. There never is, a dreamy voice interjected. They looked up to find Luna standing beside their table, her pale eyes focused on Harry. The Nargles told me you'd be troubled, she said, sliding onto the bench beside Hermione. They gather around people with heavy thoughts. Despite everything, Harry felt the corner of his mouth twitch. Is that right? Oh yes. You're practically swarming with them. Luna tilted her head. You know, I never liked Draco much. He called me loony to my face. Luna. Hermione began, looking uncomfortable. But I'm still sorry he died, Luna continued, unperturbed. And I'm sorry you had to make that choice. Her simple honesty cut through the tension. Harry felt something loosen in his chest. Thanks, Luna. She smiled serenely. The Malfoys left the grounds an hour ago. Mr. Malfoy looked very ill, but Mrs. Malfoy. Luna paused. Well, she reminded me of those Muggle stories about vengeful spirits. Harry's stomach dropped. You saw them leave? Luna nodded. They were talking to Kingsley first. Something about funeral arrangements. They'll blame me, Harry said quietly. Can't say I blame them. They already do, a gruff voice interrupted. They turned to find Kingsley Shacklebolt standing behind them, his gold earring catching the sunlight. Minister, Hermione greeted him, eyes wide. Not officially, Miss Granger. Not yet. Kingsley's deep voice was weary. Harry, I need a word. Harry stood, following Kingsley to a quieter corner of the hall. The Malfoys have requested a formal investigation into their son's death, Kingsley said without preamble. Harry's throat tightened. Investigation. Standard procedure when a student dies at Hogwarts, even during a battle. Kingsley's dark eyes were sympathetic but firm. They're calling it negligent homicide. It wasn't, I know that, Harry. But there will need to be a hearing. Statements taken. The full process. Harry felt a flicker of anger. We were at war. People died. Why is Malfoy's death different? Because you publicly admitted to leaving him to die, Kingsley said bluntly. And because the Malfoys, despite everything, still have powerful connections. So what happens now? Nothing immediate. The Ministry's in shambles. We're rounding up remaining Death Eaters. Rebuilding will take priority. Kingsley sighed. But I wanted you to be prepared. This isn't going away. Harry nodded stiffly. Fine. I'll be ready. Kingsley placed a hand on Harry's shoulder. For what it's worth, I don't judge your actions. War forces impossible choices on all of us. He paused. But Harry, how we handle the aftermath, that's what truly defines us. With that cryptic statement, Kingsley left, stopping to speak briefly with Professor McGonagall at the staff table. Harry remained in the corner, processing. A formal investigation. A hearing. The prospect should have terrified him, but instead, he felt only a dull resignation. Let them investigate. Let them judge. What was one more burden to carry? A flash of red caught his eye, Ginny, entering the hall with Neville. She hadn't noticed Harry yet, her face drawn with grief but still beautiful. Still Ginny. Harry realized with a pang that he hadn't spoken to her since before the final battle. Before Malfoy. Before he'd become this harder, colder version of himself. Would she still look at him the same way when she knew what he'd done? Not just heard about it, but really understood. Before he could decide whether to approach her, the great hall's doors burst open. A squad of Aurors marched in, led by a square-jawed witch Harry didn't recognize. The hall fell silent as the witch strode to the center of the room. I'm Senior Auror Robards, she announced, her voice magically amplified. We're here to secure the castle and begin processing evidence. McGonagall rose from the staff table. Hogwarts is already secure, Aurora Robards. And the students and families here have been through quite enough without your processing. With respect, Headmistress, we have our orders. Robards' eyes scanned the room, landing on Harry. Mr. Potter. We'll need to speak with you first. All eyes turned to Harry. He stepped forward, back straight. About Voldemort, or about Draco Malfoy, he asked, loud enough for everyone to hear. A murmur ran through the crowd. Robards' expression tightened. Both matters are under investigation. Investigation? Ron stood, face flushing. Are you joking? Harry just saved the entire wizarding world. Ron, Harry said quietly. It's fine. It's not fine. Ron's voice rose. Fred died for this. So the Ministry could waltz in and treat Harry like a criminal. Tension crackled through the hall. Several people stood, voices rising in agreement with Ron. The auras shifted nervously, hands moving toward wands. Enough. McGonagall's voice cut through the chaos. This is still a school, and there are still children present. She fixed Robards with a steely glare. Your team may use the antechamber for any necessary interviews, but they will be conducted with appropriate supervision and respect. Robards looked like she wanted to argue, but merely nodded stiffly. Fine. Mr. Potter, if you'll accompany us. Harry moved toward the Aurors, feeling the weight of hundreds of eyes on his back. Just as he reached them, a hand caught his arm. Wait. Hermione pressed a small vial into his palm. Memories. From Ron and me. About the room of requirement. Just in case. Harry pocketed the vial with a grateful nod. Then he followed Robards into the small chamber where, a lifetime ago, he'd been named the 4th Triwizard Champion. The next hours blurred together. Robards and 2 other Aurors questioned him exhaustively, about Voldemort, the Horcruxes, Snape's memories, the final duel. They seemed particularly interested in the Elder Wand, which Harry had decided to return to Dumbledore's tomb. Eventually, inevitably, they turned to Malfoy. Your own words during the final confrontation confirm that you deliberately left Draco Malfoy to die, Robards said, quill poised over parchment. Is this accurate? Harry didn't flinch. Yes. Could you explain your reasoning? We were searching for an object Voldemort had hidden in the room of requirement, Harry said, keeping his voice steady. Malfoy and his friends intercepted us. There was a fight. Crabbe cast fiend fire, which he couldn't control. And you found broomsticks to escape? Yes. 3 of them. Yet you chose not to go back for Malfoy and the others? Harry met her gaze. It was war. We had the object we needed to defeat Voldemort. Every second counted. Going back meant risking everything. So you prioritized your mission over Malfoy's life? I prioritized defeating Voldemort over the life of someone who was actively trying to capture me for him, Harry corrected. Yes. Robards made a note. The Malfoys claim their son was coerced by the Dark Lord. That he acted under duress. Harry thought of Malfoy on the astronomy tower, lowering his wand before the other Death Eaters arrived. Of his reluctance to identify Harry at Malfoy Manor. Maybe, he conceded. But in that moment, he was an enemy combatant. An enemy combatant, Robards repeated, eyebrow raised. Interesting terminology for a schoolmate. Harry felt a flicker of anger. We stopped being schoolmates when he took the dark mark. The questioning continued for another hour before McGonagall finally intervened, insisting Harry needed rest. As he left the antechamber, exhausted and irritable, Harry found Ron and Hermione waiting in the now empty Great Hall. That bad, huh? Ron asked, taking in Harry's expression. Just bureaucracy at its finest, Harry sighed. Thanks for the memories, though I didn't need them in the end. Hermione looked troubled. Harry, I've been thinking. The ministry's in disarray, but eventually, there will be trials for the remaining Death Eaters. And the Malfoys were Death Eaters. Your testimony could be crucial in determining their sentences. Harry stared at her. You think I should testify against them? After what I did to their son? I'm just saying you have influence, no. Harry cut her off. I'm not using their son's death to punish them further. That's not who I am. At least, he hoped it wasn't. Ron cleared his throat. Ginny was looking for you. She's down by the lake. Harry nodded, grateful for the change of subject. I'll go find her. He left the castle, blinking in the bright afternoon sunlight. The grounds showed signs of battle, scorched earth, broken statues, but the lake sparkled peacefully, untouched by the violence. Harry spotted Ginny sitting alone by the water's edge, knees pulled up to her chest. She looked up as he approached, her expression unreadable. Hey, he said softly, settling beside her. Hey yourself. She studied his face. You look like hell. Despite everything, Harry chuckled. Feel like it too. Neither spoke for a moment, watching the giant squid create lazy ripples on the lake's surface. Fred would have loved the giant squid, Ginny said suddenly. Always wanted to ride it. George dared him once, but Mum caught them before they could try. Harry smiled sadly. I'm so sorry about Fred. Me too. Her voice was steady, but her eyes shimmered. I keep expecting to turn around and see him with George, finishing each other's sentences. Harry hesitated, then put an arm around her shoulders. She leaned into him, her hair tickling his chin. Is it true? She asked quietly. About Malfoy? Harry tensed. Yes. Good. He pulled back, startled. Good. Ginny's brown eyes were hard. After what they did to me in my first year? After everything they've done to you? Yeah, good. Ginny, don't you dare apologize, she interrupted fiercely. You didn't cast the fiend fire. You didn't put Draco in that room. You made a tactical decision in the middle of a war. Her vehemence surprised him. A lot of people don't see it that way. A lot of people didn't fight in this war like we did. Ginny took his hand. Harry, you're not a killer. You're the guy who disarmed Voldemort instead of using an unforgivable, for Merlin's sake. If you left Malfoy, you had your reasons. Her certainty both comforted and disturbed him. She saw him so clearly, yet not at all. What if I am, though? He said quietly. What if I am a killer now? Ginny's expression softened. Then I still love you. And we'll figure it out together. She leaned forward and kissed him, gently at first, then with growing intensity. Harry pulled her closer, losing himself in the familiar scent of her, in the comforting rightness of her lips on his. For a few precious minutes, he forgot about Malfoy, about the ministry, about everything. When they finally broke apart, Ginny rested her forehead against his. You're not alone in this, Harry. Remember that. He nodded, his throat too tight for words. Together they sat by the lake as the afternoon sun began its descent, casting long shadows across the battle-scarred grounds. The days that followed fell into an uneasy rhythm. Funerals began, solemn, tear-filled affairs that left Harry drained. Fred's was the hardest, the Weasleys' grief a palpable force that made Harry's chest ache. Remus and Tonks were buried side by side, little Teddy cradled in Andromeda's arms throughout the service. Harry attended them all, standing stoic and silent beside his friends. The weight of survival pressed down on him with each freshly dug grave. Between funerals, Harry helped with the castle's restoration. Physical labor provided a welcome distraction from his thoughts. He threw himself into the work, shifting rubble, repairing walls, avoiding the curious stares and whispered conversations that followed him everywhere. The newspapers didn't help. The Daily Prophet vacillated between hailing him as a hero and questioning his methods. Chosen one or chosen killer? One headline blared, accompanied by a split image, Harry facing Voldemort and a school photo of Draco Malfoy. Kingsley had offered Harry safe accommodation at a ministry property, but Harry declined. He preferred Hogwarts, broken as it was. Here, at least, the ghosts were familiar. On the 5th day after the battle, McGonagall found Harry repairing a damaged staircase in the East Wing. "Potter," she said, her tone gentle but firm. "A word, if you please." Harry set down his wand, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Professor? Walk with me." They moved through the castle in silence, McGonagall leading them to her office, formerly Dumbledore's, formerly Snape's. Harry hadn't been inside since viewing Snape's memories. Dumbledore's portrait watched from behind the desk as they entered, his painted eyes twinkling. "Ah, Harry," the portrait said warmly. "I've been hoping to see you." Harry nodded stiffly. His feelings toward Dumbledore remained complicated, gratitude mixed with resentment, respect tainted by the knowledge of how much had been hidden from him. "Please, sit," McGonagall gestured to a chair before conjuring a tea service. "You look exhausted, Potter." "I'm fine." "You most certainly are not," she countered, pouring tea into a delicate cup. "None of us are." "Which is precisely what I wish to discuss." Harry accepted the tea, more to have something to do with his hands than from any desire to drink it. "The Malfoys have scheduled their son's funeral for tomorrow," McGonagall said without preamble. "It will be held at their family estate." Harry stared into his teacup. "I assume I'm not invited." "Quite the contrary," McGonagall's voice was tight with disapproval. "Mrs. Malfoy specifically requested your presence." Harry's head snapped up. "What?" "I had the same reaction," McGonagall admitted. "Under normal circumstances, I would advise you to decline. However." She glanced at Dumbledore's portrait. "The Malfoys are unlikely to make the request out of forgiveness, Harry," Dumbledore's portrait said softly. "Narcissa Malfoy is many things, but she is not known for her mercy." "So it's a trap," Harry said flatly. "Not precisely," McGonagall replied. "The service will be attended by ministry officials, including Aurors. You would not be in physical danger." "Then why?" "Psychological warfare, perhaps," Dumbledore mused. "To force you to confront what happened. Or to publicly humiliate you," McGonagall added. "To present you as the villain in their narrative." Harry set down his untouched tea. "I'll go." McGonagall's eyebrows rose. "Potter, I don't think I need to go," Harry insisted. "I need to." "I don't know." "Face it." "Face them." "Harry," Dumbledore's portrait leaned forward, "some wounds cannot be healed by confrontation. Some bridges, once burned, remain ashes." "Maybe," Harry conceded. "But I still need to try." McGonagall studied him over her spectacles. "Very well. But you will not go alone. I shall accompany you, as will Kingsley." Harry started to protest, then thought better of it. "Thank you, Professor." He rose to leave, but paused at the door, a question nagging at him. "Professor Dumbledore," he said, turning back to the portrait, "if you had been there, in the room of requirement, would you have saved Malfoy?" Dumbledore's painted face grew solemn. "I would like to think so, Harry. But then, I have made my own share of terrible choices in the name of greater goods." He sighed. "The question isn't what I would have done, but whether you can live with what you did." Harry nodded, unsatisfied but unsurprised. "Good night, professors." He left the office, the weight of tomorrow's confrontation settling heavily on his shoulders. Malfoy Manor loomed against a slate-gray sky, its black marble facade gleaming dully in the weak morning light. Harry stood at the wrought iron gates, McGonagall and Kingsley flanking him, a knot of apprehension tightening in his stomach. "You can still change your mind, Harry," Kingsley said quietly. Harry shook his head. "No. I need to do this." The gates swung open silently, admitting them to a gravel path lined with immaculately trimmed yew hedges. Harry had been here once before, dragged as a prisoner to be identified, his face swollen from Hermione's desperate jinx. Now he walked involuntarily, back straight, eyes forward. White peacocks strutted across the manicured lawn, their eerie cries breaking the morning stillness. As they approached the house, Harry noticed other figures converging on the entrance, small groups of somber-faced wizards and witches, all dressed in formal black robes. "The turnout is larger than expected," McGonagall murmured, frowning. Kingsley nodded grimly. "Many hoping to curry favor with a still powerful family. Others simply curious." Harry suddenly felt underdressed in his simple black robes. He'd never attended a wizarding funeral before Fred's, and even that had been an intimate family affair. This looked more like a society event. A house elf met them at the entrance, bowing low. "This way, sirs and madam. The ceremony is in the East Garden." They followed the elf through the mansion's opulent interior. Harry tried not to look too closely at the rooms they passed, memories of his previous visit still too raw. The East Garden opened before them, a vast space transformed for the occasion. Rows of black chairs faced an ornate silver casket positioned on a raised dais. Behind it stood a large wizarding photograph of Draco, his pale face serious but occasionally breaking into a slight smirk. The casket was empty, Harry knew. There had been nothing left of Draco to bury. Their arrival caused an immediate stir. Conversations hushed as heads turned, eyes widening in recognition and shock. "Potter dares show his face. The nerve. Heard he practically admitted to murder." Harry ignored the whispers, his gaze fixed on the front row where Narcissa and Lucius Malfoy sat. Narcissa's back was ramrod straight, her white blonde hair swept into a severe knot. Lucius looked diminished somehow, his once proud posture now slumped, his hair lank around his gaunt face. Kingsley led them to seats near the back. As they settled in, Harry felt the weight of hundreds of stares boring into him from all directions. "Chin up, Potter," McGonagall whispered. "Dignity above all." The ceremony began with a somber procession of black-robed wizards bearing silver wands, which they raised in unison to emit a shower of emerald stars. A thin, elderly wizard stepped forward to eulogize Draco, speaking of his intelligence, his ambition, his pure bloodline. Not once did the wizard mention Voldemort, the Dark Mark, or the circumstances of Draco's death. Harry listened with growing discomfort as Draco was posthumously sanitized, transformed from a complex, flawed person into a martyred saint. This wasn't the Malfoy he'd known, the bully who'd called Hermione a mudblood, who'd worn "Potter stinks" badges, who'd let Death Eaters into Hogwarts. But neither was it the terrified boy who'd lowered his wand on the astronomy tower. Or the reluctant identifying witness at Malfoy Manor. Or the desperate figure reaching out as flames closed in around him. When the eulogist finished, Narcissa rose and approached the casket. She placed a single white rose upon it, her composed face betraying no emotion. Then she turned to face the gathered crowd. "My son," she began, her voice clear and carrying, "was many things to many people. A student. A friend. A Slytherin. A pure-blood heir. But to me, he was simply my Draco." She paused, her eyes scanning the crowd until they locked onto Harry. "My only child, taken before his time." A murmur ran through the assembly. Everyone felt the shift, the subtle redirection of the ceremony. "We live in times of forgiveness," Narcissa continued, her tone sharpening slightly. "We are told to move forward. To rebuild. To forget." She descended the dais steps, moving with deliberate grace toward the back of the garden. Toward Harry. "But a mother does not forget," she said, her voice hardening as she approached. "A mother does not forgive the hand that takes her child from her." She stopped directly before Harry's seat, looking down at him with cold, burning eyes. "Harry Potter," she said, his name like ice on her lips, "you sit here, in my home, before my son's empty casket, after confessing to leaving him to die in flames. I ask you now, before these witnesses, why? The garden fell completely silent. Harry felt McGonagall tense beside him, Kingsley's hand moving subtly toward his wand. Slowly, Harry stood to face Narcissa. They were nearly the same height, her pale eyes level with his green ones. "Mrs. Malfoy," he began, his voice steadier than he felt. "I can't give you an answer that will satisfy you. Nothing I say will bring Draco back or ease your pain." "Try," she hissed. Harry took a deep breath. "We were at war. Draco chose his side, just as I chose mine. In that moment, in that room, with fiend fire bearing down on us, I made a calculation. The mission to defeat Voldemort outweighed the life of someone actively working against us." Gasps and murmurs rippled through the crowd. Harry ignored them, keeping his eyes on Narcissa. "It wasn't personal," he continued. "It wasn't revenge. It was war. War." Narcissa's lip curled. How convenient to hide behind such a word. "Tell me, Potter, did you hesitate? Did you consider, even for a moment, going back for my son?" The question hit Harry like a physical blow. Had he hesitated? He thought back to that suspended moment hovering above the flames, Malfoy's desperate face turned up toward him. "Yes," he admitted. "I considered it. But I chose the mission." Something flickered in Narcissa's eyes, a momentary crack in her icy composure. "At least you admit it," she said softly. Then, louder, "You see, my friends. The great Harry Potter, the chosen one, admits he chose to let my son burn. Remember that when they call him hero." She turned back to the assembled crowd, her voice rising. "Remember that when the Ministry awards him medals. Remember that when history is written by the victors. Remember that a 17-year-old boy burned alive while Harry Potter flew away." The crowd's response was immediate and divided, shouts of support mixed with cries of protest. Kingsley rose to his feet, his deep voice cutting through the chaos. "Enough, Mrs. Malfoy. This is a funeral, not a political rally." Narcissa's smile was razor-thin. "On the contrary, Minister. In times like these, everything is political." She turned back to Harry. "Even death." She glided back toward the casket, leaving Harry standing rigid, his face hot with a complex mix of shame and defiance. McGonagall placed a hand on his arm. "Perhaps we should leave, Potter." Harry shook his head minutely. "No. I came to pay respects. I'll see it through." The ceremony continued, but the atmosphere had changed. The ritualistic elements felt hollow after Narcissa's confrontation. Harry endured it, back straight, face impassive, even as he felt the stares and whispers intensify around him. When the final silver stars had faded above the empty casket, the assembly began to disperse. Harry rose to leave with McGonagall and Kingsley, but found their path blocked by Lucius Malfoy. Up close, Lucius looked worse than Harry had realized, skin sallow, eyes bloodshot, hands trembling slightly. Azkaban and Voldemort's displeasure had taken a visible toll. "Potter," he said, his voice a shadow of its former aristocratic drawl. "A word." Kingsley stepped forward. "Mr. Malfoy, we're leaving. Any communication can be arranged through official channels." "Please," Lucius said, the word clearly foreign to his lips. "Just a moment." Harry nodded. "It's okay. I'll hear him out." Kingsley frowned but stepped aside. Lucius led Harry a few paces away, out of immediate earshot. "My wife," Lucius began, his voice low, "has chosen her path forward. Vengeance. Politics. Public humiliation." He met Harry's eyes. "I have chosen another." Harry frowned. "What do you mean?" "The Dark Lord took everything from me, Potter. My home. My dignity. My son." Lucius's voice cracked slightly on the last word. "I have nothing left to lose, and nothing left to give." Except, perhaps, information. Information about what? Death Eaters still at large. Sympathizers in high places. Financial networks. Lucius's eyes darted around nervously. In exchange for leniency from the ministry. Harry stared at him. You're offering to inform on your former associates? I'm offering to survive, Potter, Lucius hissed. And to ensure my wife survives. Draco is gone. There's nothing left for us but survival. The naked desperation in Lucius's face stirred something uncomfortable in Harry's chest. This broken man before him bore little resemblance to the imperious Death Eater who'd slipped Tom Riddle's diary into Ginny's cauldron, who'd led the attack in the Department of Mysteries. Why tell me? Harry asked. Why not go directly to Kingsley? Because despite everything, despite what happened to my son, you saved the wizarding world from the Dark Lord. Lucius's voice was barely audible. And because my wife lied to the Dark Lord for you, even knowing what you'd done to Draco. There is a debt between us, Potter, complex and ugly though it may be. Harry considered this. I'll speak to Kingsley. No promises, but I'll tell him what you've said. Lucius nodded stiffly. That's all I ask. As Harry turned to go, Lucius added, Potter. My wife will never stop hating you. Never stop seeking ways to make you pay. You should know that. I do, Harry said simply. I'd feel the same in her position. He rejoined McGonagall and Kingsley, and they made their way back through the manor toward the exit. As they passed through the grand foyer, Harry caught sight of a familiar face, Andromeda Tonks, Narcissa's estranged sister, cradling baby Teddy in her arms. Their eyes met across the marble expanse. Andromeda's expression was complex, grief for her daughter and son-in-law mingled with something harder to define. Harry changed direction, approaching her cautiously. Mrs. Tonks. I didn't expect to see you here. Family is family, she said quietly, even when divided by war. Narcissa is still my sister, Harry. Her pain is real, whatever else she may be. Harry glanced down at Teddy, whose hair had shifted to a soft blue. How is he doing? As well as can be expected. Andromeda's voice softened. He'll need his godfather, when you're ready. The implication was clear, Andromeda knew Harry wasn't ready yet, was too consumed by his own trauma and guilt to properly care for his godson. I will be, Harry promised. Soon. She nodded, her resemblance to Bellatrix momentarily striking. I understand why you came today, Harry. It was brave. Foolish, perhaps, but brave. Did it help? Harry asked, suddenly desperate to know. Being here, for Narcissa. Despite everything between you. Andromeda considered this. Grief has a way of transcending old divides. But it can also deepen them. She adjusted Teddy in her arms. Only time will tell which way the scale tips for my sister. With a slight nod, she moved away, leaving Harry to ponder her words as he rejoined his escorts. They departed Malfoy Manor in silence, each lost in thought. Only when they had passed through the gates and reached the apparition point did Kingsley speak. That was illuminating, he said carefully. Mrs. Malfoy is clearly positioning herself as the grieving mother wronged by the system. And she's not entirely wrong, is she? Harry replied, more sharply than he'd intended. McGonagall's expression softened. Potter, you must not allow her narrative to become your own. What happened was tragic, but it was not murder. Wasn't it? Harry challenged. I made a choice knowing he would die. In war, Kingsley began. I know. In war, terrible choices must be made. Harry ran a hand through his hair in frustration. But the war's over now, and I'm the one who has to live with those choices. They stood in awkward silence for a moment before Harry remembered his conversation with Lucius. Minister, Lucius Malfoy approached me with an offer. Information in exchange for leniency. Kingsley's eyebrows rose. Did he now? Interesting timing. I told him I'd pass it along, but made no promises. Wise, Kingsley nodded. I'll have someone follow up. Though I suspect Narcissa won't approve of her husband's approach. They're fracturing, McGonagall observed. Grief affects people differently. Harry thought of the Malfoys, Narcissa's cold fury, Lucius's desperate bargaining. Two different responses to the same devastating loss. What happens now? He asked. You go back to Hogwarts, Kingsley said firmly. You focus on healing. Let me worry about the Malfoys and the Ministry. And the investigation? We'll proceed as required, Kingsley sighed. But Harry, you should know, public opinion is divided. Many see you as wholly justified. Others. He trailed off. Others see me as no better than the Death Eaters, Harry finished. Letting someone die when I could have saved them. People need time to process everything that happened, McGonagall said. In the meantime, focus on yourself, Potter. On rebuilding your own life. Harry nodded, though the prospect seemed impossible. How did you rebuild a life haunted by flames and screams? They apparat back to Hogsmeade, the crack of displacement echoing like a gunshot in the quiet village. As they walked toward the castle, Harry felt the weight of the morning's events pressing down on him. Narcissa's words played on repeat in his mind, a mother does not forgive the hand that takes her child from her. He hadn't just made an enemy today. He'd created something far more dangerous, a grieving mother with nothing left to lose. The weeks following Draco's funeral passed in a blur of activity. The castle's reconstruction accelerated, with volunteers pouring in from across the wizarding world. Harry worked alongside them, losing himself in physical labor during the day and collapsing into exhausted, dreamless sleep each night. The Ministry began formal hearings for Death Eaters captured during and after the battle. Harry testified when required, his statements factual and unemotional. He spoke of what he'd witnessed at Malfoy Manor, of Pettigrew's momentary mercy, of Voldemort's rebirth in the graveyard. He answered questions about the Horcruxes, about Snape's true allegiance, about the Elder Wand. Not once did he mention the Malfoys beyond what was strictly necessary. The investigation into Draco's death continued in the background, statements taken, memories reviewed, timelines established. Harry cooperated fully, repeating his account without embellishment or excuse. June faded into July. Hogwarts began to look like itself again, though scars remained, a cracked pillar here, a mismatched stone there. Little reminders of what had been lost. Harry's friends worried about him. Ron and Hermione exchanged concerned glances when they thought he wasn't looking. Ginny tried to draw him out with Quidditch or walks by the lake, with varying success. Luna left strange, supposedly therapeutic objects outside his door, a dirigible plum said to absorb negative auras, a peculiar humming stone meant to realign disrupted magical fields. He appreciated their efforts, even when he couldn't show it. But the truth was, Harry felt stuck, unable to move forward, unwilling to look back. On a warm July evening, Harry sat alone on the astronomy tower, legs dangling over the edge. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the grounds. From this height, the battle damage was less visible, the castle and its surroundings almost peaceful. The sound of footsteps behind him broke his solitude. Harry didn't turn, recognizing the familiar tread. "Thought I'd find you up here," Ron said, settling beside him with a grunt. "Hermione's been looking for you. Something about Newt preparation schedules." Harry snorted. "Some things never change." "Thank Merlin for that," Ron agreed, pulling a flask from his pocket. "Fire whiskey?" "Nicked it from George's stash." Harry accepted the flask, taking a small sip. The liquor burned a warm path down his throat. "How is he?" Harry asked. "George?" Ron's expression dimmed. "Some days are better than others. He's reopening the shop next week. Says Fred would have wanted it." They passed the flask back and forth in companionable silence, watching the sky darken. I saw in the prophet that the ministry's offering you an Auror position, Ron said eventually. Fast-track training and everything. Harry nodded. Kingsley mentioned it. And? I haven't decided. Ron took another swig of fire whiskey. Thought that was always the plan. Catch dark wizards, save the day. All that. It was, Harry agreed. Before Malfoy. Before Harry had learned what he was capable of when pushed to the edge. The words hung unspoken between them. You know, Ron said carefully, what happened with Malfoy, it doesn't define you, mate. Harry stared out at the darkening grounds. Doesn't it, though? I made a choice that ended someone's life. That changes a person. Yeah, it does, Ron admitted. But it doesn't have to be the only thing that changes you. Harry glanced at his friend, surprised by the unexpected wisdom. Ron shrugged, ears reddening slightly. What? I can be profound sometimes. Must be Hermione's influence, Harry teased. Probably. Ron grinned, then sobered. Seriously though, Harry. We all did things during the war we never thought we'd do. Things we're not proud of. Harry raised an eyebrow. Like what? Ron looked down at his hands. I left you both. In the tent. Walked out when you needed me most. That was the Horcrux, partly, Ron conceded. But partly it was me. My choices. My weaknesses. He looked up. I have to live with that. Doesn't mean it's all I am. Harry considered this. How do you? I don't know, make peace with it. Dunno if you ever completely do, Ron said honestly. You just, keep going. Try to balance the scales a bit. Be better when you can. They lapsed into silence again, the fire whiskey warming them against the evening chill. There's a memorial service tomorrow, Harry said eventually. For everyone we lost. McGonagall's organizing it. Ron nodded. Mum mentioned it. The whole family's coming. I've been asked to speak. Of course you have, Ron sighed. What will you say? Harry shook his head. No idea. What can you say about so much death? About kids dying in a school battle? The truth, I guess, Ron suggested. That's usually your style. The truth, Harry repeated. Yeah, maybe. As darkness fell completely, they made their way back inside, the empty fire whiskey flask tucked safely in Ron's pocket. The castle corridors were quiet, most residents already retired for the night. Harry paused outside the room of requirement, staring at the blank wall where the door would appear. He hadn't been back since that day. Hadn't tried to see if the room still worked, if the fiend fire had destroyed it completely or if it had somehow repaired itself. Harry. Ron had stopped a few paces ahead, watching him uncertainly. Harry shook himself. Just thinking. About tomorrow? About everything. Ron nodded, understanding. Get some sleep, mate. Tomorrow's gonna be rough. Yeah, Harry agreed. Good night, Ron. Night, Harry. Harry continued to his temporary quarters, mind racing. The memorial service loomed before him, another public moment, another opportunity for judgment. Another reminder of all they had lost. But as he prepared for bed, Ron's words echoed in his mind, it doesn't have to be the only thing that changes you. Maybe there was wisdom there. Maybe the path forward wasn't forgetting or excusing what he'd done, but ensuring it wasn't the end of his story. With that thought providing small comfort, Harry drifted into uneasy sleep, dreams of fire and falling mercifully held at bay for one more night. Dawn broke clear and bright over Hogwarts, as if nature itself was honoring those being remembered. The great hall had been transformed, rows of chairs faced a simple stone monument bearing the names of the fallen. Enchanted candles floated overhead, each representing a life lost during the Battle of Hogwarts. Harry stood at the back, watching people file in. Families of the deceased occupied the front rows, their grief still raw and visible. Behind them sat survivors, ministry officials, and others who had come to pay respects. Ready for this? Hermione appeared at his side, her formal black robes a stark contrast to her pale face. Harry shook his head. Not really. You. No. She slipped her hand into his. But we'll get through it together. They moved toward the front, where seats had been reserved for them. Ron was already there with his family, the Weasleys a solid block of red hair and shared sorrow. Ginny made room for Harry beside her, her hand finding his as soon as he sat. McGonagall approached the monument, her voice magically amplified as she welcomed everyone. We gather today not only to mourn, but to honor. To remember. To celebrate lives that, though cut short, burned brightly. One by one, speakers approached the monument, family members, friends, professors. They spoke of courage, of sacrifice, of love. Of futures never realized, potential never fulfilled. Fred's name brought George to his feet, his voice breaking as he recounted stories that drew both laughter and tears. Remus and Tonks were remembered by Andromeda, baby Teddy in her arms, his hair shifting between his parents' colors as if in tribute. Then it was Harry's turn. He approached the monument slowly, acutely aware of hundreds of eyes following his progress. The names etched in stone seemed to shimmer in the candlelight, each representing a person who had died while he lived. Harry took a deep breath, facing the assembled mourners. I've been asked to speak today about courage, about sacrifice, about victory, he began, his voice steadier than he'd expected. But the truth is, there are no words adequate for what we've lost. For who we've lost. He gestured toward the monument behind him. These names, they weren't just soldiers in a war. They were students excited about weekend Hogsmeade trips. They were teachers passionate about their subjects. They were parents, siblings, friends, lovers. They were people with dreams and flaws and favorite desserts and inside jokes. Harry paused, his eyes finding familiar faces in the crowd. They fought because they believed in something larger than themselves. They died protecting others. Protecting the future. Protecting me. His throat tightened. And I live because of them. We all do. So the question becomes, what do we do with the lives they've given us? The hall was utterly silent, every face turned toward him. I don't have an easy answer, Harry admitted. I'm still figuring it out myself. But I think we honor them by building something better. By learning from our past without being chained to it. By ensuring that their sacrifice means something. He thought of Malfoy then, not one of the honored dead, but dead nonetheless. Another life extinguished too soon. The war forced impossible choices on all of us, Harry continued. Actions we never thought we'd take. Decisions we'll question for the rest of our lives. But those choices don't define us, what we do next does. His eyes found Narcissa Malfoy, sitting stiffly near the back. She'd come alone, her black veil not quite hiding the coldness of her stare. Some wounds won't heal, Harry acknowledged. Some losses can't be made right. All we can do is try to move forward with honesty, with courage, with the determination to do better. He turned to the monument, placing his hand on the cool stone. To those we've lost, we remember. We honor. We continue. And we hope that somehow, it's enough. Harry stepped back, head bowed. For a moment, complete silence held the hall in thrall. Then, starting somewhere in the back, applause began, tentative at first, then swelling to fill the vast space. Harry returned to his seat, emotionally drained. Ginny squeezed his hand, her eyes bright with tears. Ron clapped him on the shoulder, while Hermione dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief. Well said, mate, Ron murmured. The ceremony continued, concluding with a moment of silence as the enchanted candles floated upward, passing through the ceiling to drift toward the heavens. As people began to disperse, mingling in small groups, Harry found himself approached by an unexpected visitor, Astoria Greengrass, a Slytherin student a year below them. "Potter," she said quietly. "May I speak with you?" Harry nodded, stepping away from the crowd. "Of course." Astoria's dark hair was pulled back severely, her face composed but eyes red-rimmed. "I wanted to thank you for your words today. They were honest." "I tried to be," Harry said, uncertain where this was going. "Draco and I." She hesitated. "We were to be betrothed after graduation. An arrangement between our families, but one I had come to welcome." Harry's stomach dropped. "Astoria, I'm so sorry, please," she interrupted. "I didn't approach you for apologies. I came because—" She took a steadying breath. "Because I think I understand why you did what you did." Harry stared at her, taken aback. "You do?" "Draco was caught in something larger than himself," she said softly. "Something he didn't fully understand until it was too late. He made choices, as we all did. Some good, some terrible." She met Harry's eyes directly. "In your position, facing the same situation, I can't honestly say I would have done differently." The admission clearly cost her, her voice wavering slightly. "Why are you telling me this?" Harry asked. "Because someone should," she replied simply. "Because Mrs. Malfoy's grief, while genuine, has become something destructive. Something Draco wouldn't have wanted." Harry glanced across the hall to where Narcissa stood, isolated even in the crowded room. "She's his mother." "Yes," Astoria acknowledged. "And she'll never forgive you. But that doesn't mean the rest of us can't find a way forward." With a slight nod, she turned and walked away, leaving Harry to consider her words. The rest of the day passed in a blur of conversations and condolences. Harry moved through it mechanically, shaking hands, accepting thanks, offering comfort where he could. As evening fell, he found himself drawn once again to the astronomy tower. The stars were just beginning to appear in the deepening blue sky, the waxing moon casting silver light across the grounds. Footsteps approached, lighter than Ron's, more deliberate than Hermione's. "Mind some company?" Kingsley asked, joining Harry at the parapet. "Not at all, Minister." Kingsley smiled slightly. "Not official yet. The Wisengamot votes next week. They'd be fools to choose anyone else," Harry said honestly. "Perhaps." Kingsley gazed out at the darkened landscape. "Your speech today was powerful, Harry. Exactly what people needed to hear. I just spoke the truth." "The truth is often exactly what's needed," Kingsley agreed. "Which is why I've come to share some with you." Harry tensed slightly. "About the investigation?" "Yes. It's concluded." Kingsley turned to face him fully. "No charges will be filed regarding Draco Malfoy's death. The official finding is that Vincent Crabbe's reckless use of fiendfire was the sole direct cause, with the chaos of battle contributing to the inability to rescue all parties." Relief washed over Harry, followed immediately by confusion. "What about my testimony?" "I admitted to leaving him." "Your testimony was considered, along with the memories provided by Ronald Weasley and Hermione Granger, and statements from others familiar with the Room of Requirement's properties." Kingsley's deep voice was carefully neutral. "The consensus was that you made a split-second decision in a combat situation, prioritizing your mission and the lives of your companions." Harry frowned. "This feels like a whitewash." "It's a recognition of context," Kingsley corrected. "Not absolution, but understanding. The Malfoys won't see it that way." "No," Kingsley agreed. "They won't. Narcissa has already filed an appeal, though it's unlikely to succeed." Harry leaned against the stone parapet. "So that's it? Case closed, move on." "Legally, yes." Kingsley placed a hand on Harry's shoulder. "Personally, that's up to you." They stood in companionable silence, watching the stars emerge one by one. "I've been thinking about your offer," Harry said eventually. "The Auror position. And I'm going to decline," Harry said, the decision feeling right as he spoke it. "At least for now." Kingsley nodded, unsurprised. "May I ask why?" Harry considered his answer carefully. "Because I need time to figure out who I am now. After everything. And because—" he hesitated. "Because I'm not sure I trust myself with that kind of power yet." "An honest assessment," Kingsley said approvingly. "And a wise one. What will you do instead?" "I'm not sure," Harry admitted. "Finish my education, maybe. Travel. Find out what normal life feels like." "Normal may be relative for you, Harry." "Probably," Harry agreed with a small smile. "But I'd like to try." Kingsley straightened, his official manner returning. "Well, whatever path you choose, the ministry will support you. And the offer remains open, should you change your mind." "Thank you, Minister." As Kingsley departed, Harry remained at the tower, contemplating his future. For the first time since the battle, possibilities stretched before him, uncertain, but his to shape. The legal case might be closed, but Harry knew the story wasn't over. Narcissa Malfoy's vendetta, his own conscience, the wizarding world's judgment, these would continue. But perhaps they didn't have to define him. Perhaps, as he'd said in his speech, what mattered most was what he did next. With that thought providing tentative hope, Harry turned from the parapet and headed back inside. Tomorrow awaited, with all its challenges and opportunities. And for the first time in weeks, he found himself looking forward to it. Chapter 3, What Remains. The ancient floorboards of number 12, Grimmauld Place creaked under Harry's feet as he paced the gloomy drawing room for what felt like the 100th time that morning. 3 months since the Battle of Hogwarts. 3 months since Voldemort's defeat. 3 months since the Room of Requirement. Since Malfoy. Harry stopped before the black family tapestry, his eyes tracing the burn marks where disowned family members had been blasted away. He'd been tempted, more than once, to take his wand to Narcissa's name, a petty revenge that would accomplish nothing. "Master should eat," Creature croaked from the doorway, a tray of untouched breakfast floating beside him. "Master has not eaten since yesterday." "I'm not hungry," Harry mumbled, but the house elf ignored him, setting the tray on a nearby table with surprising gentleness. "Master must keep up his strength," Creature insisted. "Master has visitors coming today." Harry groaned. He'd almost forgotten. Ron and Hermione were stopping by, another of their increasingly transparent attempts to drag him out of his self-imposed isolation. "What time is it?" he asked, suddenly aware he hadn't checked a clock all morning. "Nearly 11, Master." Creature eyed him critically. "Perhaps Master would like to shower before his friends arrive." Harry ran a hand through his disheveled hair, catching a whiff of himself. 3 days since his last shower, at least. The old house elf was right, even if his suggestion bordered on impertinence. "Yeah," Harry sighed. "Good idea." Upstairs, the ancient pipes rattled and groaned as hot water flowed through them. Harry stood under the spray, letting it wash over him, trying to clear his head. Sleep had been elusive lately, his nights haunted by dreams of fire and screams. Steam filled the bathroom as Harry's thoughts drifted to yesterday's Daily Prophet. Another opinion piece debating his actions, this one titled, Hero or Villain, The Potter Paradox. The wizarding community remained stubbornly divided on the matter of Draco Malfoy's death, even now. Some hailed Harry as a pragmatic hero making tough choices in wartime. Others painted him as a cold-blooded killer who had abandoned his principles when it mattered most. The truth, as always, lay somewhere in the murky middle, a space Harry himself couldn't seem to navigate. Clean and dressed in fresh jeans and a faded Weasley jumper, Harry made his way back downstairs. He'd just managed to force down a few bites of toast when the front door knocker sounded. "Harry?" Hermione's voice called from the entryway. "It's us." In here, he called back, bracing himself for the familiar mix of concern and forced cheerfulness that characterized these visits. They appeared in the doorway, Ron with a brown paper bag that smelled promisingly of takeaway curry, Hermione clutching a stack of papers that Harry suspected were related to their upcoming return to Hogwarts. "Blimey, mate," Ron said, eyeing the drawing room's gloom. "Would it kill you to open a curtain once in a while?" Hermione elbowed him, but Harry managed a small smile. "Probably. Very on brand for this house, don't you think? Dark and depressing." "We brought lunch," Hermione said brightly, taking the bag from Ron. "And some news." They settled around the kitchen table, where Creature had already set out plates and utensils. The house elf had developed an unexpected fondness for Hermione since the war ended, largely due to her continued advocacy for elf rights. "So," Harry said between mouthfuls of surprisingly good chicken tikka, "what's this news?" Ron and Hermione exchanged one of those looks that told Harry they'd rehearsed this conversation. "McGonagall sent out the official letters," Hermione began, sliding an envelope across the table. "For those of us returning to complete our newts." Harry stared at the envelope. His name was written in McGonagall's precise handwriting. "I told her I haven't decided yet," he said flatly. "We know," Ron said, "but she sent it anyway. Said the offer stands regardless." Harry pushed the letter aside. "What about you two? Still planning to go back?" "I am," Hermione confirmed. "I've already worked out a study schedule for." "Of course you have," Harry interrupted with a genuine smile this time. "Well, someone has to be prepared," she huffed. "Newts are incredibly important for." "I'm going back too," Ron cut in. "But just for the exams. McGonagall's arranged a special program for those of us who, you know, missed our 7th year because we were busy saving the world." The casual reference to their Horcrux hunt hung awkwardly in the air. "That's good," Harry said finally. "You should both go. Finish properly." "You should too, Harry," Hermione said softly. "It might be healing to be back there on your own terms." Harry pushed his food around his plate. "Back where everyone will stare and whisper. Where I'll walk past the room of requirement every day. Where I'll see the spots people died. Where you were happy once," Hermione countered. "Where you belonged." Before Harry could respond, a sharp tapping came from the window. A handsome tawny owl hovered outside, a thick official-looking envelope tied to its leg. Ron let the owl in, offering it a bit of naan-bread, which it accepted before extending its leg toward Harry. The envelope bore the ministry seal. Harry broke it open with a sense of dread that proved justified as he read the first lines. "What is it?" Hermione asked, peering over. "Ministry summons," Harry said dully. "The Malfoys' appeal was successful. There's going to be a formal inquiry." Ron swore under his breath. "When?" "Next week." Harry tossed the letter onto the table. "They want me to testify under Veritaserum." "They can't do that," Hermione exclaimed, snatching up the letter. "Veritaserum testimony is only admissible in cases of," she broke off, scanning the document. "Oh. In cases of suspected intentional harm leading to death," Harry finished. "Yeah." Ron's face darkened. "This is ridiculous. After everything you did." "It's fine," Harry cut him off. "Let them do it. I've got nothing to hide." "It's not fine," Hermione insisted. "They're treating you like a criminal when you were fighting a war." "And who's behind this appeal?" "The Wisengamot already cleared you." "3 guesses," Harry said grimly. Understanding dawned on Ron's face. "Narcissa Malfoy." Harry nodded. "According to Kingsley, she's been relentless. Lobbying, calling in favors, working every angle." "But what's the point?" Ron asked. "Even if the inquiry finds against you somehow, what's the worst they could do? You're Harry Potter. You defeated Voldemort, for Merlin's sake. It's not about punishment," Harry said quietly. It's about public humiliation. About making sure everyone knows exactly what happened. About making me live with it. As if you haven't been, Hermione murmured, reaching for his hand. Harry pulled away, standing abruptly. I need some air. He headed for the small, grim garden at the back of the house, Ron and Hermione following after a moment's hesitation. The October air was crisp, leaves from the lone, twisted oak tree drifting down around them. I'm sorry, Harry, Hermione said. We didn't come here to upset you. I know, Harry sighed, leaning against the rough bark of the tree. It's not you. It's just. I thought by now things would be getting better. Moving forward. Instead, I'm stuck in this limbo. Ron kicked at a pile of leaves. You can't hide forever, mate. Trust me, I've tried the hiding thing. Doesn't work. I'm not hiding, Harry protested. I'm just processing. In a dark house alone with a cranky house elf and your guilt. Hermione raised an eyebrow. That's the definition of hiding, Harry. So what do you suggest? Harry asked, a defensive edge creeping into his voice. I just show up at the Leaky Cauldron for a pint. Walk down Diagon Alley while people point and whisper. Half the wizarding world thinks I'm a murderer, and the other half wants me to be Minister of Magic. We're not saying it's easy, Ron said. Just that it's necessary. The longer you stay in here, the bigger it gets in your head. Harry ran a hand through his hair in frustration. You don't understand. Every time I close my eyes, I see his face. I hear him screaming. He swallowed hard. And the worst part? There's still this voice in my head saying I'd do it again. That I made the right call. Hermione's expression softened. That doesn't make you a bad person, Harry. It makes you human. Complicated and conflicted and trying to make sense of an impossible situation. Maybe, Harry conceded. Then, changing the subject, how's Ginny? Ron and Hermione exchanged another look. She's good, Ron said carefully. Training hard. The Harpies scout was at her last school match. She asks about you, Hermione added. She's worried. Harry nodded, guilt twisting in his gut. His relationship with Ginny had become another casualty of his self-isolation. Their letters had grown shorter, less frequent, the distance between them expanding beyond mere physical separation. I should write to her, he said, more to himself than to them. You should talk to her, Hermione corrected. In person. Before Harry could respond, the back door opened to reveal Creature, looking uncharacteristically anxious. Master has another visitor, the house elf announced. Minister Shacklebolt is waiting in the drawing room. Harry straightened, surprised. Kingsley's here. Yes, Master. He says it's urgent. The three friends exchanged worried glances before hurrying back inside. They found Kingsley standing by the fireplace, his normally calm demeanor visibly strained. Harry, he nodded. Ron, Hermione. Forgive the intrusion. What's happened? Harry asked, immediately on alert. Kingsley sighed heavily. I came to warn you. The Prophet's Evening Edition will be running a problematic story. About the inquiry? Hermione guessed. Partly, Kingsley confirmed. But there's more. Somehow they've obtained excerpts from Severus Snape's personal records. Notes he kept about students, including assessments of their character and potential. Harry's stomach dropped. And I'm guessing Snape's notes about me weren't exactly glowing. No, Kingsley said grimly. But that's not the issue. The problem is his notes about Draco Malfoy, which paint a picture of a troubled but ultimately redeemable young man. One who, in Snape's estimation, was acting under extreme duress and fear for his family. Ron swore. How did they get Snape's private records? Isn't that stuff supposed to be sealed? It is, Kingsley confirmed. We're investigating the leak. But the damage is done. Harry sank into an armchair. So now the story becomes, Harry Potter left reformed Death Eater to die, instead of, Harry Potter made tough war decision. I'm afraid so, Kingsley agreed. Combined with the timing of the inquiry announcement. It's a coordinated attack on your character, Harry. Narcissa, Harry said flatly. It wasn't a question. Kingsley nodded. She's become quite the political operator these past months. Donations to the right causes. Interviews portraying herself as the grieving mother seeking only truth and closure. Strategic appearances at memorial events. She's rebranding the Malfoy name, Hermione realized. Using Draco's death to distance the family from Voldemort while simultaneously undermining Harry. Precisely, Kingsley confirmed. And she's remarkably effective. Public sympathy is shifting. So what do I do? Harry asked, feeling suddenly tired. Counter-interviews. My own PR campaign. Kingsley's expression was sympathetic but firm. You need to emerge from isolation, Harry. Your absence has allowed others to control the narrative. Attend the inquiry with your head high. Speak your truth, the full truth, not just the parts that make you look bad or good. And in the meantime, Harry gestured around the gloomy house. Just, go about my business while everyone debates whether I'm a calculating killer. In the meantime, Kingsley said, live your life. See your friends. Consider your future. Show the wizarding world that you're neither hiding in shame nor dismissing the gravity of what happened. After Kingsley left, an uncomfortable silence settled over the drawing room. Harry stared into the fireplace, thoughts racing. He's right, you know, Hermione said finally. About all of it. I know, Harry admitted. I don't know how to be that person anymore. The one who just goes out there and faces everything. You don't have to know, Ron said simply. You just have to try. Harry looked at his friends, their concerned faces, their unwavering loyalty despite everything, and felt something shift inside him. A small crack in the wall he built around himself. Okay, he said finally. I'll try. Harry's re-emergence into wizarding society began small, dinner at the Burrow the following evening. Molly fussed over his thinness, Arthur asked careful, neutral questions about Muggle technology, and George managed a shadow of his old smile when Harry admired the latest Wheezes products. Ginny was conspicuously absent, having scheduled an extra Quidditch practice. Harry couldn't decide if he was relieved or disappointed. The prophet story about Snape's records proved every bit as damaging as Kingsley had warned. The paper ran a full week of follow-up pieces, each more sensationalized than the last. Narcissa gave an exclusive interview, striking the perfect balance between dignified grief and quiet determination. I seek not vengeance, but truth, she was quoted as saying. My son deserves that much. By the day of the inquiry, public opinion had shifted noticeably. Harry could feel it in the stares that followed him as he entered the ministry, in the whispers that trailed behind him like smoke. The hearing took place in courtroom 10, the same imposing chamber where Harry had faced charges for underage magic before his 5th year. The symmetry wasn't lost on him as he took his seat in the center, facing the full Wizengamot. Hermione and Ron sat in the gallery behind him, along with most of the Weasleys, Neville, Luna, and other DA members who'd come to show support. On the opposite side sat the Malfoys, Narcissa perfectly composed in elegant black robes, Lucius considerably more haggard but still managing a veneer of aristocratic dignity. Kingsley presided, his deep voice echoing as he called the proceedings to order. This inquiry, he began, seeks to establish the facts surrounding the death of Draco Lucius Malfoy during the Battle of Hogwarts. This is not a criminal trial, but a truth-seeking procedure. The next hours passed in a blur of testimony. Professors described Draco's academic record. Former classmates recounted interactions with him. A ministry expert detailed the nature of fiendfire and its devastating effects. Harry barely listened, his attention fixed on Narcissa. Not once did her gaze waver from him, cold, assessing, unblinking. Not once did her perfect composure crack. Finally, it was Harry's turn. A ministry official approached with the Veritaserum. 3 drops on the tongue, Mr. Potter, the witch instructed. Harry complied, feeling the potion's effects almost immediately, a strange floating sensation, as if his thoughts were disconnected from his will. Please state your name for the record, Kingsley began. Harry James Potter. Were you present in the room of requirement when the fiendfire was cast? Yes. Please describe, in your own words, what occurred. The questions continued, and Harry answered with the detached honesty the potion demanded. He described finding the diadem. The confrontation with Malfoy, Crabbe, and Goyle. The eruption of fiendfire. The desperate escape. You found broomsticks and escaped the fire, the lead questioner, a witch named Hopkirk, stated. At what point did you become aware that Draco Malfoy and his companions were trapped? I saw them climbing a tower of charred desks, Harry replied, his voice flat under the potion's influence. The fire was closing in around them. Crabbe was already gone. Could you have reached them on your broom? Possibly. Why didn't you attempt a rescue? Here it was. The central question. Under Veritaserum, Harry could only tell the complete truth. Because I made a calculation, he said, the words flowing without resistance. We had the Horcrux. Malfoy was a Death Eater who had just tried to capture me for Voldemort. Risking the mission, risking Ron and Hermione, to save him seemed unjustifiable in that moment. Murmurs rippled through the courtroom. Did you want Draco Malfoy to die? Hopkirk pressed. No, Harry answered immediately. I didn't want him to die. But I wasn't willing to risk everything to save him either. Had you and Malfoy been enemies at school? Yes. Did that influence your decision? Harry hesitated, the Veritaserum compelling complete honesty. Maybe. Not consciously. But our history wasn't positive. Do you regret your decision? The question hung in the air. The courtroom fell silent, awaiting his answer. I regret that Malfoy died, Harry said slowly. I regret that I had to make that choice at all. But I can't honestly say I would act differently if I were back in that moment, with the same knowledge I had then. More murmurs, louder this time. Narcissa's expression didn't change, but her knuckles whitened as she gripped the edge of her seat. The questioning continued for another hour, covering minute details of those fateful moments in the room of requirement. As the Veritaserum began to wear off, Harry felt an increasing weight settling on his shoulders. The truth, unvarnished and complete, left nowhere to hide, not even from himself. Finally, Kingsley called for concluding statements. Narcissa rose, her voice clear and carrying. My son was 17, she began. A child, by wizarding standards. Yes, he made mistakes. Yes, he followed a dark path. But as Severus Snape's records clearly indicate, he was coerced through threats against his family. He was redeemable. She turned to face Harry directly. Harry Potter had a choice that day. A moment to demonstrate the mercy and compassion he's supposedly known for. Instead, he chose to let my son burn alive. Her voice broke slightly, the first crack in her perfect composure. Whatever legal conclusions this inquiry reaches, that moral truth remains. She sat down to murmurs of sympathy from many in the gallery. Harry's supporters shifted uncomfortably. When Harry's turn came, he declined to make a statement, indicating that his testimony under Veritaserum stood on its own. Kingsley nodded in acknowledgement before addressing the chamber. This inquiry will now deliberate. A formal finding will be issued within the week. These proceedings are concluded. As people began filing out, Harry remained seated, suddenly unsure if his legs would support him. Ron and Hermione pushed through the crowd to reach him. You okay, mate? Ron asked, concern etched on his face. Harry nodded mechanically. Fine. Just, drained. You did well, Hermione assured him. You told the truth. That's all you could do. Harry's eyes tracked Narcissa as she glided toward the exit, pausing briefly to accept condolences from sympathetic wizards. Just as she reached the door, she turned, her eyes finding Harry's across the emptying chamber. No words were exchanged. None were needed. The battle lines remained drawn. The inquiry's findings, released 3 days later, represented an attempted compromise that satisfied no one. It acknowledged that while Harry's decision had contributed to Draco's death, the primary responsibility lay with Vincent Crabbe for casting an uncontrollable dark spell. It noted the context of war, the mission's importance, and the split-second nature of the decision. The conclusion stopped short of either exonerating or condemning Harry, instead classifying the incident as a tragic consequence of conflict with complex moral dimensions. The Prophet's headline the next day read, "Inquiry finds Potter's actions morally complex in Malfoy death." Beneath it, a split photo, Harry emerging from the ministry, looking tired and drawn, alongside a school portrait of Draco Malfoy, smirking confidently in his Slytherin robes. Harry tossed the paper aside, unable to stomach any more. He'd returned to Grimmauld Place after the inquiry, but had made efforts to follow Kingsley's advice, dinners with friends, visits to Andromeda and Teddy, even a brief appearance at George's shop reopening. Each outing was exhausting, a gauntlet of stares and whispers. But each one also made the next slightly easier. The world was gradually accepting his re-emergence, accommodating to his presence again. Today, however, Harry had a more difficult appointment, one he'd been both dreading and oddly anticipating. He was meeting Ginny at a small Muggle cafe in London, neutral ground for what they both knew would be a complicated conversation. He arrived early, securing a corner table and a cup of tea that grew cold as he waited. Ginny appeared precisely on time, her Quidditch-toned frame moving with athletic grace as she navigated between tables. "Hi," she said simply, sliding into the seat across from him. "Hi," Harry replied, suddenly tongue-tied. "You look good." She did, her red hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, freckles standing out against her fair skin. Healthy, vibrant, alive in a way Harry hadn't felt in months. "Thanks." She ordered a coffee before turning her full attention to him. "You look better than the last time I saw you." "Less, haunted." Harry managed a small smile. "I'm working on it." They fell into an awkward silence, neither quite knowing how to bridge the chasm that had opened between them. "I watched the inquiry," Ginny finally said. "Well, parts of it. The important bits." Harry nodded, unsurprised. Most of the wizarding world had followed the proceedings through the magical equivalent of a broadcast. "What did you think?" he asked, bracing himself. Ginny considered, taking a sip of her coffee before answering. "I think you told the truth. The whole truth, not just the convenient parts." She paused. "That takes courage." "It was Veritaserum," Harry pointed out. "Not much choice in the matter." "You could have fought the inquiry altogether," she countered. "Used your influence, your status." "You didn't." Another silence fell, more comfortable this time. "I owe you an apology," Harry said finally. "For pulling away. For not writing. For everything." Ginny shook her head. "You don't owe me anything, Harry. We all cope differently. Still. I shut everyone out, especially you. That wasn't fair." "No," she agreed, "it wasn't. But I understand why you did it." She hesitated. "The question is, what happens now?" It was the question Harry had been asking himself for days, ever since he'd finally admitted that he needed to move forward, one way or another. "I don't know," he admitted. "I'm still figuring that out. But I do know I can't ask you to wait while I sort myself out. That's not fair to you." Pain flickered across Ginny's face, quickly mastered. "So this is." A pause, Harry said. Not an end. But I need to find my footing again before I can be what you deserve. Ginny studied him, her brown eyes intense. And what if I don't want to pause? What if I want to help you find that footing? You can't, Harry said gently. Not this time. This is something I need to work through on my own. She nodded slowly, accepting if not quite agreeing. The Harpies offered me a reserve position. Starting after Newts. Ginny, that's amazing. Harry's smile was genuine. You'll be brilliant. It means a lot of travel. Intensive training. The subtext was clear, their lives were moving in different directions, at least for now. You should absolutely take it, Harry said firmly. You've earned it. They talked for another hour, about Quidditch, about Hogwarts, about her family. Carefully avoiding the weightier topics that hovered just beneath the surface. When they finally parted outside the cafe, their hug lasted longer than necessary, neither quite willing to let go. Take care of yourself, Harry, Ginny whispered against his shoulder. And when you're ready, I'll be around. Harry watched her walk away, a complicated mix of relief and loss swirling inside him. Another change, another ending that wasn't quite an ending. But this one, at least, was his choice. A step toward whatever came next. The weeks following the inquiry brought gradual shifts in Harry's life. He began spending time at Hogwarts, helping with the final stages of reconstruction before the new term began. Being there was both painful and healing, each corner held memories, some beautiful, some terrible. He avoided the 7th floor, unable yet to face the blank wall where the room of requirement had once appeared. But he sat by the lake where he'd once been happy, walked the Quidditch pitch where he'd found freedom in flight, visited Hagrid's rebuilt hut for rock cakes and 2-strong tea. With each visit, the castle reclaimed a piece of itself in Harry's mind, becoming again a place of wonder and possibility, not just the battleground where so many had died. During one such visit, Harry encountered Professor McGonagall on the grounds, supervising the replanting of a section of the Forbidden Forest that had burned during the battle. Potter, she greeted him, a rare smile softening her severe features. Good to see you out and about. Professor, he nodded. The castle's looking almost normal again. Almost, she agreed, watching as Hagrid directed a team of volunteers maneuvering a young oak into position. Though I suspect normal is a relative term now. They stood in companionable silence for a moment before she spoke again. Have you given any more thought to returning for your newts? Harry hesitated. Some. I'm just not sure if Hogwarts is still the right place for you, she finished. Perfectly understandable. It's not just that, Harry admitted. It's whether academic qualifications even matter anymore. For someone like me. McGonagall gave him a sharp look. Someone like you? You mean a celebrity? A war hero? Something like that, Harry said uncomfortably. Potter, fame is fleeting and notoriously fickle, as recent events have amply demonstrated. Her tone was brisk. Education is permanent. No one can take it from you, regardless of public opinion. Harry considered this. I suppose you're right. Of course I am, she said crisply. However, Hogwarts is not the only path. The ministry's offering accelerated qualification programs. Or there are international options, if you feel a change of scenery might be beneficial. Harry looked at her in surprise. You're not going to insist I come back here? A hint of sadness crossed her face. As much as I would welcome your return, Potter, I'm not blind to the complications it would entail. For you, and for other students. The Slytherins, you mean? Among others, she acknowledged. Draco Malfoy's absence would be noticeable. Particularly with you present. Harry nodded, unexpectedly grateful for her candor. Whatever you decide, McGonagall continued, know that you always have a place at Hogwarts. But don't feel obligated to claim it immediately, or even at all. Thank you, Professor, Harry said sincerely. For understanding. Understanding comes with age, Potter. She straightened her hat. One of its few compensations. As she turned to go, Harry was struck by a sudden question. Professor? Do you think Dumbledore would be disappointed in me? For what happened with Malfoy? McGonagall paused, considering the question with the gravity it deserved. Albus Dumbledore, she said finally, made his own share of terrible choices in pursuit of what he believed was right. He sacrificed others. He kept secrets. He manipulated those who trusted him. Her eyes met Harry's directly. So no, Potter, I don't believe he would judge you harshly. Whether that's reassuring or troubling is for you to decide. She left him then, returning to supervise the restoration work, her words lingering in the crisp autumn air. Later that day, as Harry prepared to depart, he found himself drawn to the castle's memorial, a simple white stone obelisk engraved with the names of those who had fallen defending Hogwarts. He traced the familiar names with his fingertips: Fred Weasley, Remus Lupin, Nymphadora Tonks, Colin Creevey, Lavender Brown. Draco Malfoy's name was not among them. Despite dying within the castle walls, he had been fighting for the other side, right until the end. Or had he? The uncertainty of Malfoy's final allegiance was yet another weight Harry carried. He wouldn't have wanted his name there anyway, a soft voice commented. Harry turned to find Luna standing beside him, her pale eyes thoughtful as she studied the memorial. Luna, he greeted her, surprised. I didn't hear you approach. I was following a trail of Raxburts, she explained serenely. They're quite attracted to grief, you know. This memorial is swarming with them. Harry nodded, long accustomed to Luna's unique perspective. I was just thinking about who's remembered and who isn't. History is written by the victors, Luna said, echoing Narcissa Malfoy's words from the funeral. But that doesn't make it complete or true. No, Harry agreed. It doesn't. Luna tilted her head, studying him with her unervingly perceptive gaze. You're different now. Less surrounded by Raxburts. More, present. I'm trying to be, Harry admitted. It's not easy. Important things rarely are, she said simply. That's why they matter. They stood together in comfortable silence for a while, the autumn sun casting long shadows across the grounds. I visited his grave yesterday, Luna said suddenly. Draco's. Harry stared at her in shock. You did? Why? Luna shrugged. To pay my respects. We weren't friends, but we shared 7 years in this castle. That counts for something. Was it? I mean, how was it? Harry found himself asking. Beautiful, in a cold sort of way, Luna replied. Very Malfoy. Lots of white marble and silver. Narcissa was there, placing flowers. Harry tensed. Did she see you? Oh yes, Luna said calmly. She asked why I'd come. I told her the truth, that everyone deserves to be remembered, even people who made bad choices. What did she say to that? She said I was either very wise or very foolish, Luna recalled. Then she asked if I'd come on your behalf. Harry's stomach dropped. And? I told her no, that you'd need to make that journey yourself, when you were ready. Luna looked at him directly. Are you ready? Harry exhaled slowly. I don't know. Maybe. Eventually. Luna nodded as if this made perfect sense. Well, when you are, the graves are always there. That's rather the point of them. With that peculiar but profound observation, she drifted away, leaving Harry alone with his thoughts and the lengthening shadows. November brought bitter winds and the first dusting of snow to London. Harry, true to his word, had continued his gradual re-emergence into wizarding society, attending Kingsley's official inauguration as minister, visiting the borough for Sunday dinners, even making a brief appearance at a ministry fundraiser for war orphans. Each public outing was slightly easier than the last, though the stares and whispers persisted. Harry had developed a thicker skin, learning to distinguish between genuine hostility and mere curiosity. He'd also begun spending regular time with Teddy, his godson now 7 months old and displaying an alarming tendency to change his hair color to match whoever was holding him. With Andromeda's patient guidance, Harry was slowly developing confidence in caring for the infant, finding unexpected peace in the simple routines of feeding, changing, and playing. "You're a natural," Andromeda commented one afternoon as Harry successfully soothed a fussing Teddy. "Remus would be proud." Harry smiled sadly. "I hope so. I still feel like I have no idea what I'm doing most of the time." "That's parenting in a nutshell," Andromeda assured him, pouring tea for them both. Constant improvisation punctuated by moments of blind panic. Harry chuckled, settling Teddy more comfortably in his arms. The baby's hair had shifted to match Harry's unruly black mop, though thankfully without the accompanying cowlick. "Have you decided about your newts?" Andromeda asked, returning to a conversation they'd started during his previous visit. "I'm leaning toward the ministry's accelerated program," Harry admitted. "It seems like the best compromise." "And after?" "The Auror office is still holding a spot for you, I hear." Harry shook his head. "I'm not sure that's the right path anymore. Fighting dark wizards, enforcing the law, after everything, I'm not convinced I'd be good at it. Or that I'd want to be." "Understandable," Andromeda said, stirring her tea thoughtfully. "There are other ways to make a difference, you know." "That's what Hermione keeps saying," Harry smiled. "She's got my future all mapped out, qualifications, career progression, probably even my retirement plan." "Smart girl, that one," Andromeda observed. "Though sometimes the most meaningful paths aren't the ones others chart for us." Harry nodded, considering this as Teddy began to doze off in his arms, tiny fist clutching Harry's shirt. There was something profoundly centering about holding this small, innocent life, a tangible reminder of what the war had been fought for. Of what remained, despite all that was lost. "I've been thinking about visiting Malfoy's grave," Harry said suddenly, surprising himself with the admission. "Do you think that's a terrible idea?" Andromeda was silent for a long moment, weighing her response. "It could be healing. Or it could reopen wounds. Much depends on why you want to go." "I'm not entirely sure," Harry admitted. "Closure, maybe. Or just, acknowledgement. Of what happened. Of my part in it. Those are better reasons than many," Andromeda said carefully. "But you should be prepared for the possibility of encountering my sister." "I know." Harry shifted Teddy slightly as his arm began to tingle with pins and needles. "That's partly why I haven't gone yet. Narcissa is." Andromeda paused, searching for the right words. "She's complex, Harry. Always has been. The most strategic of us three sisters, the most controlled. But beneath that control is a capacity for both great love and terrible vengeance." "I've seen both," Harry said quietly. "Yes, you have." Andromeda's expression turned reflective. She loved Draco more than anything in this world. More than her husband, more than her family name, more than her own life. Losing him, it's transformed her. "Into what?" Harry asked. Andromeda sighed. "That remains to be seen. But be careful, Harry. Grief can calcify into something dangerous when it has nowhere else to go." The conversation shifted to lighter topics after that, but Andromeda's warning lingered in Harry's mind long after he'd left her home. That night, back at Grimmauld Place, he made a decision. Tomorrow, he would visit Draco Malfoy's grave. The Malfoy family crypt stood on a small hill at the edge of their estate, surrounded by ancient yew trees whose branches swayed gently in the November wind. Harry approached slowly, breath fogging in the cold air, a simple bouquet of white lilies in his hand. He'd come early, hoping to avoid any other visitors, particularly Narcissa. The wrought iron gates of the small cemetery stood open, an elaborate M worked into the metalwork. Beyond them, generations of Malfoys lay in elegant marble tombs, their names and dates inscribed in silver lettering. Draco's grave was easily identifiable, the newest, its white marble still unmarred by weather or time. A life-sized statue of a phoenix rising from flames adorned the tomb, an ironic choice given the manner of his death. Beneath it, the inscription read, Draco Lucius Malfoy June 5, 1980 to May 2, 1998 beloved son taken too soon. Harry stood before the grave, suddenly uncertain. What was he doing here? What could he possibly say or think or feel that would matter now? I didn't expect to find you here, a cold voice observed from behind him. Harry turned slowly, unsurprised but still unprepared to find Narcissa Malfoy standing a few yards away. She wore elegant grey robes, her blonde hair pulled back severely, her pale face composed but eyes hard as flint. Mrs. Malfoy, Harry acknowledged with a slight nod. I can leave if you prefer. Why have you come? She asked, ignoring his offer. To ease your conscience. No, Harry said honestly. I don't think anything could do that. She studied him, her expression unreadable. The flowers are a nice touch. Very theatrical. Harry looked down at the lilies in his hand. They weren't meant to be. My mother's name was Lily. Something flickered in Narcissa's eyes, a brief softening, quickly suppressed. She moved forward to stand beside the grave, opposite Harry. You've been busy these past weeks, she observed. Rebuilding your image. Resuming your role as the wizarding world's golden boy. That's not why I've been, spare me, she cut him off. I've watched you carefully, Mr. Potter. The strategic appearances. The carefully worded statements. The photo opportunities with your orphaned godson. Harry felt a flare of anger. Teddy isn't a prop. He's my responsibility. My family. Family, Narcissa repeated, the word like ice on her tongue. Yes, family is everything, isn't it? You'd do anything to protect them. To avenge them. The threat was thinly veiled. Harry placed the lilies at the base of the tomb before responding. I understand your hatred, he said quietly. If someone had done to those I love what I did to your son, I'd feel the same. You understand nothing, Narcissa hissed, her composure cracking slightly. You cannot possibly comprehend what it is to lose a child. To know that his final moments were spent in terror and agony. To have no body to bury, nothing to say goodbye to. Harry met her gaze directly. No, I can't. And I'm sorry for that pain. Truly. Your sorrow means nothing to me. I know, Harry acknowledged. But I needed to say it anyway. They stood in tense silence, the cold wind rustling through the yew trees. In the distance, a peacock's cry echoed across the grounds. The inquiry is concluded, Harry said finally. The appeal's exhausted. The story will eventually fade from the papers. What happens now, between us? Narcissa's laugh was brittle. You think this ends? That I simply, move on? Accept platitudes and get on with my life? No, Harry said. I don't expect that. I'm asking what you want. What would constitute justice, in your eyes? She studied him, calculation replacing raw emotion. An interesting question. What would be just? She trailed her fingers along the cold marble of her son's tomb. Perhaps for you to suffer as he suffered. To know fear and fire and abandonment. Harry didn't flinch. And would that bring him back? Would it ease your grief? No, she admitted. Nothing will do that. Then what? Narcissa's eyes narrowed. You've changed, Potter. The boy who spoke at my son's funeral would have reacted differently to such threats. I'm trying to understand, Harry said simply. To find a way forward, if there is one. There isn't, she replied flatly. Not between us. Harry nodded, having expected as much. Then I'll go. I've said what I came to say." As he turned to leave, Narcissa spoke again, her voice slightly less harsh. "Why did you really come here today?" Harry paused, considering his answer carefully. To acknowledge what happened. To face it directly. To remember him. As a person, not just a choice I made. "And do you remember him?" "Every day," Harry admitted. "Sometimes I see his face in my dreams. Hear him screaming." Narcissa absorbed this. "Good," she said finally. "Carry that with you. Let it shape you. Let it haunt you as his absence haunts me." It wasn't forgiveness, Harry hadn't expected that. But it was something. An acknowledgement, perhaps, that their connection, however painful, was real. "Goodbye, Mrs. Malfoy," he said quietly. As Harry walked away, Narcissa called after him one last time. "Potter." He turned. Draco lowered his wand that night on the astronomy tower. "Did you know that?" Before the other Death Eaters arrived, he had Dumbledore at his mercy. And he couldn't do it. Harry nodded slowly. "I know. I was there. Frozen under an invisibility spell, but there." Surprise flickered across Narcissa's face, quickly masked. "Then you knew. You knew he wasn't a killer." "Yes," Harry acknowledged. "I knew." He left her then, standing beside her son's empty tomb as the wind picked up, carrying the first few snowflakes of the season. The conversation had provided no neat resolution, no dramatic reconciliation. But it had been real, honest in a way their previous encounters hadn't been. As Harry reached the gates of Malfoy Manor, he looked back once. Narcissa was still by the grave, her hand resting on the marble, her head bowed. Not the vengeful widow or the political operator, but simply a mother, grieving her son. Some wounds, Harry reflected, would never fully heal. Some bridges would never be completely mended. But perhaps they didn't need to be. Perhaps it was enough to acknowledge them, to carry them forward honestly, to let them shape but not define what came next. December transformed London into a wonderland of lights and decorations, the Muggle celebrations of Christmas bleeding into the Wizarding World's Yule festivities. Harry, having finally begun the Ministry's accelerated Newt program, found himself surprisingly busy with studies and preparations for the holiday. Grimmauld Place had undergone a transformation as well, not just the tentative Christmas decorations that Harry had put up, with Creature's reluctant assistance, but a more fundamental shift from gloomy mausoleum to something approaching a home. Harry had begun the process of renovating, starting with the drawing room and kitchen. Gone were the darkest artifacts and most oppressive furnishings, replaced by simpler, lighter alternatives. The black family tapestry remained, but now as a historical curiosity rather than a looming presence. "It's actually starting to look habitable in here," Ron commented, sprawled across a new sofa in the drawing room. "Almost cozy, if you squint." "High praise coming from you," Harry retorted, sorting through a stack of Newt practice exams. Hermione looked up from her own studies, her hair tied back in a messy bun. "It really is lovely, Harry. Makes all the difference." The three of them had fallen into a comfortable routine of studying together, Harry working through the Ministry program while Ron and Hermione prepared for Hogwarts' more traditional examinations. Despite their different paths, the familiar rhythm of shared academic struggle had helped rebuild the easy camaraderie they'd once taken for granted. "Any word from Kingsley about those Death Eater trials?" Ron asked, flipping idly through a Quidditch magazine. Harry shook his head. "Not directly. The prophet says they'll start after the new year." "Will you have to testify?" Hermione asked carefully. "Probably," Harry sighed. "For some of them, at least. The ones I had direct contact with." "The Malfoys?" Ron's question was tentative. Harry set down his quill. "I don't know. Lucius, probably. Narcissa, that's more complicated." His friends exchanged looks but didn't press further. They'd been careful with the topic since Harry's visit to Malfoy's grave, sensing the delicate balance he was trying to maintain. "Well, on a cheerier note," Ron said, sitting up straighter, "Mum wants to confirm you're both coming for Christmas." "Wouldn't miss it," Harry assured him. "Though I was thinking of visiting Andromeda and Teddy in the morning first." "Of course," Hermione nodded. "How is he doing?" "Growing like mad," Harry smiled. "Crawling everywhere now, getting into everything. And his metamorphmagus abilities are getting stronger. Last week he gave himself a pig snout and nearly gave me a heart attack." They laughed, the conversation turning to holiday plans and gifts. As the evening wore on, Harry found himself watching his friends with a sense of profound gratitude. Despite everything, the war, the losses, the moral complexities they'd faced, they were still here. Still together. Still finding moments of simple joy. Later, after Ron and Hermione had departed, Harry sat alone by the fire, nursing a butterbeer and reflecting on the past months. The journey from the immediate aftermath of the battle to this moment had been neither straight nor easy. There had been setbacks, dark days when the weight of everything threatened to overwhelm him. But gradually, incrementally, he'd found his footing again. Not as the same person he'd been before, that Harry had died somewhere along the way, perhaps in the room of requirement, perhaps in the forbidden forest. But as someone new, shaped by those experiences rather than defined by them. A tapping at the window interrupted his thoughts. An unfamiliar eagle owl hovered outside, a small package clutched in its talons. Harry let it in, cautiously accepting the delivery. The owl departed immediately, clearly instructed not to wait for a reply. The package was small, wrapped in simple green paper with no card or note. Harry examined it carefully, casting detection spells before gently unwrapping it. Inside lay a small silver pin in the shape of a snake coiled into an M, the Malfoy family emblem. Harry recognized it immediately. Draco had worn an identical pin on his school robes, a subtle reminder of his family's status and wealth. There was no message, no explanation. But Harry didn't need one. The meaning was clear enough, an acknowledgement from Narcissa. Not forgiveness, not reconciliation, but a recognition of the thread that now connected them, however painful its origin. Harry placed the pin carefully on his mantelpiece, where the silver caught the firelight. Another piece of the story. Another weight to carry. Another step forward. Outside, snow began to fall, covering London in a blanket of pristine white. Harry watched it from his window, thinking of fresh starts and clean slates, of paths yet untraveled and choices yet unmade. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges. The Newt exams loomed. The Death Eater trials approached. His role as Teddy's godfather continued to evolve. His relationships, with Ginny, with his friends, with the wizarding world at large, remained works in progress. But for now, in this quiet moment, Harry felt something he hadn't experienced in a very long time, not happiness exactly, nor contentment, but a sense of possibility. Of potential. Of a future waiting to be written, not by fate or prophecy or others' expectations, but by his own choices going forward. It wasn't everything. But it was enough. Enough to take the next step, and the next after that. Enough to begin. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.